as Stevie would do. 3, 2. As Stevie would do.
This is CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer. With your host, Mr. Gameplay Goodness himself, Stevie Stroud. Is CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer. With your host, Mr. Gameplay Goodness himself, Stevie Stroud.
All right. Hello, everybody. Looks like the intro messed up there a little bit. All right. As you can tell here today, I am co-hosting with L. Curtis Boyle here.
Hello, everyone.
And Stevie is out today for family, so it will be us. So this train wreck will be a major train wreck today.
I was just going to say, is anybody else watching YouTube? Because I'm just seeing a frozen picture at this point.
I finally started working on YouTube.
Oh, I got it going now.
Hit the play button.
I had that going. I had to do a force refresh.
All right. Everything else looking good?
Well, aside from all of us hosts, yeah.
So today we are joined here with Ron DeVoe. How you doing today, Ron?
Pretty good. How's everybody?
Good. And then we got Mark Overholzer here.
Hi, y'all.
And then all the way down from Australia, Nick Marentes.
Good day, everyone. Hello.
And then we could have Steve Bjork from sunny California.
Yep, nice, sunny, 95-degree day.
And then, of course, L. Curtis Boyle all the way up north in Canada.
Sunny and 69 Fahrenheit at the moment.
And then, of course, Coco Man from Ohio.
Hey, everybody.
And then, finally, David Ladd.
Hello, everyone. And I can't wait for the show to get going.
And what have you broken today, David Ladd? Anything?
Broken? No. Does family count? It's early.
All right, great. So, anyways, anybody have any project updates, acquisitions, recovering from CoCo Fest? What's everybody been up to this week?
I got a CoCo too. Claimed to not be working, but it works great.
Is that an eBay purchase, or is that from...
Yeah, it was eBay purchase. Yeah, it was eBay purchase. It was $40 US plus $10 shipping, so...
And was it just the system, or did you get some software and stuff? Because I thought I saw them about card. Okay.
No, just a system. I bought some software separately, but no, it was just a system. But, it worked great. Obviously, somebody didn't know they could just use RF, and they need to plug it into a TV, so...
Almost like it's free.
Almost like it's free, yeah. So, anyway. So, it's only got 16K, but it does have extended basic, so...
Oh, that's good.
Cool.
Oh, and I got some games, too, including Dungeons of Daggeroth. Yay!
I know that a lot of CoCo 1s were shipped without the extended basic, but I didn't think that many CoCo 2s got shipped without extended.
Megabug!
Maybe just at the beginning when they first came out.
Yeah. Yeah, that ROM was expensive because of the license fee for extended basic to Microsoft.
Yeah, and I think the later CoCo 2s actually just had one chip that had both ROMs, didn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So I think it was only when the original CoCo 2s came out in 83, 84-ish that they had the separate ROMs that they probably sold a few.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah, when Tandy made the deal for the for the language, the regular color basic was a lot cheaper than the extended color basic license, And also, a lot of the costs that went into the disc controller was not just the Western Digital, but also the license fee for the disc basic.
Yeah, Microsoft liked to make money. They still do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember when I got my first CoCo, it was CoCo 2 16K standard. I was not a happy camper when I realized that you have to have extended for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
But hey, gave me a reason to buy another CoCo another year later. So
Yeah. Well, when you bought a original color computer, that was $400 for a whopping 4K of RAM and just that color basic. Where if you typed in a line wrong, the only way to fix it was to type the entire line in again.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I remember those finest.
I got so frustrated that I wrote a thing called Screen Edge or Control System, and Datasoft actually sold it because it had a screen editor on there, and it also did high-res graphics.
Yeah, but it was $549 in Canada for the 4K color basic model when it first came out. I do remember that. That's what I bought mine for.
Mm-hmm.
Look at CoCo Man, 16K standard basic. Hey, that's exactly the same one I had.
And that's how it came from Radio Shack when I got my first CoCo. So, but later we sent it away, and we took it to the store and they sent it to a service center, and they upgraded to 64K and extended color basic, and they made a huge difference.
Yeah. So, any other purchases or product updates from anybody on the panel here before we continue?
Well, I did get an acquisition. Someone gave me a computer. It was brand new. They never used it. It's not CoCo. It's called an ITT Extra, and here's a picture of it. And it's brand new. It has a 20 meg hard drive in it. It has WordStar. What was that 1-2-3 program?
Lotus
1-2-3. Yeah, it has games on it, rudimentary games.
We had a clone WordStar on the CoCo 2 called ScreenStar. It was an OS 9 word processor.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Had the similar commands.
Yep, the same command set as much as they could. I mean, we didn't have the extended keyboard, so.
Yeah, it has 14 megabytes free. Pretty interesting. It has 1985 DOS in it, and it had a testing program by that PC Magazine, where you could test to see if your processor was faster than 4.77 megahertz. There it is. Laboratory Benchmark Series program was on there.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it has a speed test relative to an AT, which is 8 megahertz, which this didn't approach naturally. It was 4.77.
So it's an 8086 or an 8088?
8088.
Okay.
And it has a math coprocessor.
Oh, an 8087. Ooh.
What do you think of that?
Big bucks back in the day.
Yes, sir.
Why would you
Motorola-
ever need any more computer than that?
Yeah. Motorola kind of had a coprocessor for the 6809, but it was actually, from what I remember, just a ROM library of math calls. It wasn't actually an actual, separate CPU. It was just a list of functions you can call without having to write your own.
Yeah. Well, that's my acquisition for this week.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't buy anything because I bought everything I wanted at the fest that was available. There's a few things that weren't in stock, so.
Mm-hmm.
What all did you get, Curtis?
Well, I finally picked up Bomb Threat, the patched one, because I'm not an avid collector where I want the bug version because it's like an upside down flying plane stamp or something. But I want a game that actually can play all the way through. So thanks again, Grant, for finding that bug so it got fixed.
Yeah, I did talk to Rick, and he says he's going to do a lot more testing on the next game.
Yeah, he'll have to on this one because this game's a lot more complicated play-wise too. So
We got to remember when he was developing for Tandy did the play testing for him.
Yeah.
Like all of our other, I mean, I did internal testing, but I would throw the stuff to them and they would bang on it for a while and they go, "Oh, we didn't find any bugs." I go, "Yeah, that's because there's no bugs to find." Ha ha.
Yeah, no, it definitely helps to have third party or extra people that aren't tied with the project because you sometimes see you can't see the forest for the trees when you're developing, and you don't think of trying to do something weird a regular user would try. And you just play the game the way you're expecting it, or run the program the way you're expecting it. And it runs fine for me. And then you give it to somebody else within 5 minutes, like, well, I just crashed it.
I don't know who would be doing that. Not at all.
Broke it. You mean broke it?
When I was at THQ, basically, the golden rule of thumb is for every person that was in the department that either created the graphics, the art for the game, or did the music, or did the programming, for every one of those people, they had that number of people testing that game in the game test division. So we have like about 20 guys sitting in there, and just imagine trying to play Bassmasters Fishing Tournament hour after hour after hour.
Wow.
Yeah, tell me about it.
They didn't have any sort of automated testing where it would just like randomly move joysticks or hit keys or something just to see if it was like crash proof or.
No, and actually that was the Bassmasters had a lot of testing in there because you had a lake that you had to drive the boat on, and they had to make sure the boat didn't get stuck anywhere.
No, so you had to like follow the shoreline or whatever, and
exactly they would, because the artist would go, "Oh, I like this shoreline better. It looks better," and then the next thing you know, the boat gets stuck in the shoreline if you could hit it at the right angle.
Wow, at this point, it sounds almost as boring as real fishing. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, they like testing the Mask video game a lot better.
Yeah. And Nick, I was going to ask you, did you make any progress on your music editor and stuff and music player for your upcoming mega project?
Well, I'm working on the machine language part itself, but it's not at a point where it actually plays anything as yet. It's getting there. I do have the basic editor pretty well complete, so I mean I can do a bit of a demo of it actually working later on if you want.
Sure.
But it doesn't actually play music, but that's the part I'm working on now.
Cool. And I think Coco Man has an update on the switcheroo.
Just a very brief switcheroo update. All orders that were placed at CoCo Fest have been shipped and are at this point probably received. And I am busy with the next run of cables and. Actually have quite a few slots in the next run already paid and ready to go. So it's proving to be very popular for this little toggle switch.
That's good. Good.
Would you call it a runaway bestseller at this point?
It's the best-selling hardware product I've ever sold for the color computer.
Hands down.
All one of them. Just kidding.
Without any question.
Well, good. I'm glad things are going well on that. So, I think a lot of good hardware stuff's been coming out here the last few months. So, everybody better be getting their wallets out because there's a lot more stuff coming out, I think, too, as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff demonstrated at the fest. That's you can see the actual boards, but they're not for sale yet. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pike, and it's not just CoCo 3 stuff. It's CoCo 1, 2, and 3, which is nice. Or in the case of CoCo VGA, they've got it running on the Dragons now. I guess it technically works on the MC10, but obviously you can't fit the cover back on. So your door stopper becomes much larger than normal.
All right, cool.
Yeah, of course, everybody was dropping their jaws over at the Jim's booth when he was demonstrating his 8-port multi-pack.
Yeah. I was thinking about buying one of those, but then it had too much of David's drool on it, so I didn't want to. I thought I'd wait for a cleaner model, but I know he was pretty excited by it.
Thanks a lot, Curtis.
I think the draws were really dropping when you found out that you could plug a second pack into the first pack so you could have 16 ports.
Yeah, I mean,
for you folks out there that say you can never have enough ports for a CoCo, I'm sorry, 16 ports, that's more than enough.
Do we even have enough to plug in 16 things to a multi-pack?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now if you went back into the old days, I mean, Alpha Products / Colorware used to sell their, what was theirs, a 6-slot expander? And they had a list of about 20 different hardware project boards that you could get for it, like timer circuits and RS-232 and parallels and all kinds of stuff. So if you're doing your make-your-own project type stuff, it was quite popular to do that kind of thing. And people were complaining back then about running it with 4. Yeah. I know we did at work. We had 4, and we had literally 4 or 5 devices on every card, trying to cram everything in there.
And then, of course, you got Ed with his 4-pack and comes with 2 RS-232 ports and, oh yeah, the sound chip too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, he actually put some demos up there this last week that were pretty sweet using that sound chip.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. I was going to put a link up for that, or at least we have a demonstration so we can actually hear what it sounds like. You have the link handy, Steve? You can throw in the Skype chat or the YouTube chat? Maybe Skype, because I can't remember if YouTube lets us.
I think they're...
YouTube usually mangles the link.
Yeah, they're MP4s, I think, the demos he had.
Yeah.
Or M4Es or something like it was called.
M4A.
Yep.
M4A.
Which is MP4, basically.
Yeah, I don't think they're things that he actually composed. I think they're just files composed on other trackers as such on a PC.
Yeah, but it demonstrates what the chip's capable of.
But
well, no. He said that this was played off of his test. How the multi-pack on the CoCo.
So he must. Yeah, that's right. Because he's writing software for his or whatever he calls it, his media player, VGM player, or whatever. So he's that'll be good. It sounds like it's a register dump type affair that he's got.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, to get the more advanced sounds rather than just the pre.
Well, it means his player just has to send register values to it as a stream, which means the files are quite large. Whereas I'd like to see actual music program, like a program that actually only stores the notes and then plays it properly, because that's where it's actually playing.
Well,
the other way,
you got to remember, Nick, that you can also download instruments into this chip too.
Yeah.
So you kind of need that information.
Yeah, there's instruments as well.
So they're like digitized samples, kind of like a mod file uses then of an instrument?
They're not digitized. They're actual settings for the chip to program the sounds in.
But you can make it sound like a snare drum, kettle drum.
It's an FM. Yeah, it's an FM synthesis chip. So they're playing with it. It's an actual synthesizer, rather. That's the beauty of the chip. It is an actual synthesizer. It's actually synthesizing the sounds, rather than just putting a digital recording in there that it plays back.
Grant, I did put the link in our Skype chat if you want to pull up the file and play it.
Yeah, I can't do that. Can you do that, Curtis? Because I'm not able to share.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I only have 2 monitors. I would need 3 monitors for that, so...
You only have 2 monitors.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
I know.
That's so 20th century,
Yep, so that's probably one of the next things we'll be upgrading now. So
first world problems.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I also got a laptop this week too with that other computer I got, and on there was a well, actually, it wasn't on there. It was on old CD I had. Is a synthesizer machine thing. See it here. Something like that would be cool.
That software that you have a picture of there now. What is it? Where can we get that?
That's called Easy Keys.
Is it still around?
No,
I think it was on his laptop when he got it.
Yeah, it was Windows XP time.
Wow.
Way back. Anyways, I have a video of it on Ron's Garage with a little bit of sound coming out of it. It does little drums. It has embellishments, styles, and instruments.
I think that emulates a normal FM's bass, those little Yamaha keyboards. So that would be interesting if that can export the FM sound patches. Anyway.
Okay, I think I've got it queued up. It's playing in QuickTime. We'll see if the audio works on the share.
Put it on. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Share screen, share window. Hopefully the audio comes through.
Don't get to share the sound, system sound.
Okay, you didn't hear anything then?
No.
Shoot.
Okay, go hit the plus and then go to share system sound.
As soon as I figure where I put my plus, there we are.
It's great, isn't it?
I don't have an option for sharing system sound.
Yeah, the Mac. See, this is where Microsoft dropped the ball. The Mac version of Skype does not have a share system sound.
Oh, well, that's no darn good.
So he can't do it then. Ah, darn it.
Well, the link's in there if somebody
give
else
me
with
a
a Windows
moment.
machine wants to grab
Yeah.
All right.
So what is it you're playing?
I'm getting it ready for you right now.
All right, Curtis, go ahead and stop the screen share here, and then we'll. Cool. This is why people should not buy Macs.
No, this is why Microsoft should write some damn good software for change.
Well, they do on the PC.
No, they don't. You mean what Skype does?
I hate to say this, I use Windows, and no, Microsoft doesn't do a good job there either. So,
Well, Skype was causing spontaneous reboots just a couple weeks ago for everybody on every platform. That shit tells you how good their software testing is. They need software testers like Steve was mentioning before. Go base fishing by the shoreline with their software. So.
Yeah, I can get it played on my system, but right now I'm having an issue with that particular sound. We can come back to it later, and I'll get it
no,
working.
I got it.
Okay.
David to the rescue!
This is collaboration at its best.
Okay.
So what are you playing?
The link I put in chat.
And the
ready?
trolling has begun, by the way.
You guys hear it?
Yep.
Yep.
You might want to forward this. This track's slow. The other ones are a bit better.
Well, you just got to wait for the song to get going.
Yeah, it builds up as it goes.
So our new CoCoTALK theme song in the background.
So you can hear the synthesized drums as well as the synthesizer tracks. So.
Right.
Welcome to the CoCo Lounge.
Mark Siegel's on.
Drinks until 5 o'clock.
Hey, this is not 8-bit style sound. This is 16-bit style sound.
Yeah.
A bit beyond the normal chip tunes.
What was that?
No idea.
Somebody's calling.
Hey, a new person.
Indeed.
Anyways,
I don't think we
okay.
need to play the whole thing. So
Yeah,
that's enough to
I
give you a
think,
taste.
yeah, I think you get the idea of what this chip can do, and
Indeed.
it's kind of nice.
Who do we have?
I believe this is Thomas Cherryhomes coming in. Mark was talking about him earlier.
Yes, this is the guy that runs IRATA.ONLINE.
Hello.
Hello there.
Oh, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Mark told us a little bit in our kind of a pre-show chat here, but just for the sake of all the viewers listening that weren't part of that, do you want to kind of explain who you are and what you're doing with the project that Mark mentioned?
Absolutely. So my name is Tom Cherryhomes, and I am the systems operator and the guy that wears every other hat on this project for IRATA.ONLINE. And IRATA.ONLINE is essentially an online service that I am targeting specifically for the entirety of the retro computing community, all of its various tints. And it is a system that is essentially based on Plato. And Plato was a long-running, massively amazing time-sharing service that ran from 1962 until NovaNet shut down in 2015. And IRATA is part of the long line of resurrection that's happened to take and bring Plato to the masses. So to basically try to tie this up, there are two existing Plato systems out there right now. One of them is called Cyber One, and the other is my system, IRATA. And the difference between the two is that while Cyber One is mainly for expatriates of the original Plato system, IRATA's mission is to essentially take and bring Plato's technology to retro computing users and use it as a way of unifying all of the various retro computing sects together under one large umbrella. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so you're targeting all retro computers. Does that mean 8-bit systems exclusively, or are you including 16-bit systems, or what's your cutoff? I'm primarily targeting it for 8 and 16-bit systems, primarily because, well, you can't put a CoCo onto Twitter or Facebook. So, but we do have internet connectivity options in the form of Wi-Fi modems and Ethernet cards and the like. So, it would be possible with a suitable terminal to actually be able to bring these systems onto IRATA.ONLINE and to be able to use the facilities on IRATA.ONLINE to not only handle social networking aspects as well as multiplayer gameplay aspects, but there's also a full-blown development environment built into this thing. So we can take and make something unique for us inside this system, for all of us, that we all can use. Okay, and just from reading your page here, it sounds like is it exclusively graphical, or like if you're dating stuff back to the original 1962, obviously that would be text-based.
No, it's not. That's a misconception.
Okay.
Actually, the original system was graphical-based, and it's one of the main innovations of this particular system. You have to understand that by the early 1970s, Plato had so many innovations under its belt that if I were to list them all, we would be here for hours. But I mean, just to give you one small example, they knew starting out that as part of their system, they needed not only full screen interactivity, meaning you pressed a key, you saw something happen, but they also knew that they needed graphics. Well, as you may know, in the early to mid 1960s, even at that point, while semiconductor memory was brand new, the average cost per bit was over $2. So, if you're wanting to take and produce something that's roughly the resolution of a television screen in terms of pure memory, that would be cost prohibitive. So, what they did instead was literally invent the gas plasma display to support this project. So the modern gas plasma display that we see in televisions and whatnot literally came from this project. Just as one example. Oh yeah, and by the way, it was also a touchscreen. And all of these things were not only well established by the 1970s, which was Plato's heyday, but they continued to be used all the way up into the late 1990s. So, like I said, yes, it's so yes. To get back to your point, the terminal itself is graphical, and any terminal that needs any system that's going to connect to it needs to have a suitable terminal written that's also handles both graphics and text on the screen at the same time.
Okay, is there a minimum graphics requirement for it? Like, do you need a certain resolution, certain amount of colors, etc.? Or?
Well, there's the original system, of course, was monochrome, and the Plato terminal specification is 512 by 512. And what for example, what happens with the Atari terminal is that it scales it down to 320 by 192. The line drawing functions, the text, the font output functions, etc. It scales all that down to fit onto the screen. The Atari version also has a facility so that you can zoom in and look at the display, pan around the display in full size if you want to do that as well. So something similar for the color computer will have to be done.
Okay, so we could use the hardware scrolling, for example, and actually do a real 512 by 512. You could just scroll up and down, for example, or
Yes, you
scale
could.
it, as you're mentioning.
Or scale it down. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And, yeah. And to facilitate all of this, on the website here, you have the features and the requirements here. There's also a text section which actually provides, among many other things, a complete protocol description for the for the service, for the protocol that's used in the service, both in HTML and ASCII text format. And there are also multiple example implementations in C, so you can get the idea of the algorithms that you need in order to implement a terminal.
Okay. Does it support sound as well, or is it just graphics?
There was a device that was attachable to Plato terminals called the Gooch Synthetic Woodwind, and PTerm, which is the software that works on the PC, actually does support this. So yeah, you have the ability to do sound, and the protocol has plenty of tricks up its sleeve in order to facilitate communication with external devices, which you could also take and map to a sound card, for example. So, yeah, it's pretty open-ended in that regard.
How do you pay for this?
I pay for this for the fact that I literally have a day job that supports me and my family extremely well, so I'm doing this entirely as a labor of love.
And how long have you been working on this?
I've been working on this since the Plato community roughly released the initial Cybus distribution late last year, and have been silently working on it, got it to a workable state right at the end of March, and released it out into the public, and have been tirelessly promoting it ever since.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing that with us. It definitely looks like an interesting project, and I haven't had a chance to look through the tech specs there, but I mean, some of the stuff is particular with Nitrous 9, because that's kind of my forte. We have a lot of graphics commands that were also designed to be thrown across terminals using escape code sequences and stuff for drawing circles and boxes and stuff. So it sounds like that would actually be a pretty nice fit between the two of them.
Absolutely.
But somebody has to make a front end for us, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you have to write a terminal program to basically handle the Plato protocols.
Yep, and that's part of my thing as well. Since I have experience implementing the protocol, I just finished, I'm almost finished with an Android version of the software, so I have all the protocol bits in my head and how to implement them. So anything I can do to help facilitate that, I will bend over backwards to help. I know all the weird little ins and outs that need to happen. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
So what do you serve this on?
I serve this, well, that's an interesting thing in and of itself. I serve this on fairly standard PC hardware, which is emulating a control data supercomputer, specifically a control data 17865. This machine is a large machine, was built in the late 1970s, and the register size is 60-bit. The memory word size is 60 bits wide. That's 60. And
Okay.
yeah,
It's almost a 64-bit machine in the mainframe.
almost. Yeah, almost. And I'm emulating all of this on a fairly standard Linux distribution, and I've got everything set up to where BTRFS does live snapshots of the whole system, so it backs everything up. So while it's running, so it's just fairly standard hardware, and I've got it running here in a rack in my lab.
So this would be an emulating thing.
Yes. Yes, there's multiple levels of emulation here.
Yes.
And you did the Atari port yourself, though?
The Atari port actually was done at Atari itself in the early 1980s. But as it happened, a handful of people came over from Control Data, which was one of the stewards of Plato, and worked with Atari to actually take and produce an official cartridge. So we've taken that cartridge and made a couple of small changes to it to report a slightly different terminal type for various arcane internal reasons, and basically you can throw that onto a flash cart and and run it directly on the real hardware. And that's exactly, I have a machine over here on my bench that does just that.
Now, is this the Atari 8-bit 400, 800 series?
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct.
I just want to make sure it wasn't the ST or TTs.
No, this is 1983, 1984 time frame.
Okay.
So yeah. So as that happened, we also recently discovered a terminal for the TI-99 4A as well, and it works with this service as well. So,
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So could there be something that somebody has done in the past for the CoCo?
I would have imagined if that would have existed, you guys would have found it already.
Yeah, I can't say I've heard of it. So
We'll have to call Fort Worth and find out.
So I do know that there was Plato courseware that was done and sponsored by Tandy. That would have been done on the Plato courseware development system, PCD2. But as far as a terminal emulator, I'm not so sure.
Oh, Richard, we can hear you.
How many different platforms do you currently have the old terminal software for?
We currently have the old terminal software for Atari and TI-99 4A. I am also smack dab in the middle of implementing a terminal for the Commodore 64, and I've got development environments set up to handle right now Apple II, Apple II GS, Amiga, Atari ST, Atom, a few others. I'm basically in preparation for either me writing the terminal software or helping someone else to write this software. And that's part of the reason why I'm trying to go on and promote these systems here too, because I'm looking for interested people to help out. Because while I am a competent software programmer, there's a certain slowdown time for me as I try to get familiar with the hardware and try to coax the hardware into doing this stuff.
So, would you say that basically you don't? What's cool about your part is you don't have to have any kind of memory stored on your part, right? It's all
correct.
It goes.
Yes, the majority of the system is just a terminal.
Yeah.
Now there is a variation that is called a microplato or microtutor, which allows you to run an interpreter on your machine that also works in tandem with my system, so that you can run certain parts of the lesson locally. But that was never used very much. So if someone were to write a 6809 interpreter for it, you would have the ability to run certain things locally, like if you wanted to do arcade games, for example.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yes,
that's something that'd be very worthwhile.
And that's part of one of the more interesting aspects of the system. We have a subsection, a notes file on IRATA called projects, and that is for the Indiana Jones types. Because, quite frankly, we have a lot of amazing catacombs buried within the system. Nothing was ever gotten rid of or thrown away. And we need to go in and discover what these bits and pieces are and document them. And just like in Indiana Jones, sometimes there be snakes, and we have to find them, document them, and work around them or fix them. And we also have the ability to take and modify the system software itself as well. I just received a series of patches on punch card decks to add some commands to tutor the language to add support for TCP/IP sockets. So we'll be able to communicate in some form or fashion with the outside world. But I have to figure out how to apply them.
So in our terminal program, we'd have to be able to have a buffer so we can record what we did.
The only buffer that you absolutely have to have is a FIFO, basically to handle the incoming serial data to translate it. Other than that, the only other requirement is that to really help things, especially at higher speeds, is to implement XON and XOFF flow control. That's it.
Now, for the 8-bit machines that you do have software already done for, which is the Atari and TI-99, and you're working some others. Now, did you receive the source code for the original Atari, or did you have to reverse engineer that? Or
Well, that's a funny story in and of itself. Actually, initially we did a disassembly from by hand, and managed to get roughly about 90% of the way through. And I got in contact with another friend of mine who runs the Atari Museum, Kurt Vendel, and as it happens, he has he has tape backups of virtually everything that was in Atari's personal computer division, and one of the things that he had was the source code to the Play-Doh cartridge. And when I mentioned it offhand, he went, "Oh, I have that here," and he just sent it to me about 5 minutes later. Oh, thanks. I should have talked to you earlier.
Yeah, before the 90% was done.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, as far as the TI, don't have the source code for it. It needs to be modified, and so looking for people who are well versed enough in 9900 assembler to be able to handle that. The nice thing is that with the example implementations that we have, like I mentioned before, those are in C. So anybody can basically take a look. Anybody who decent programmer can look at those, see what the algorithms are, and basically port them across.
Okay. Now, do you have the source code for some of these 8-bit machines actually available for people to look at if they want to try to transcode it to a different CPU? Okay.
Yes, they do. Yes, it's all in the tech section.
Okay. I wish I had more time to get onto that project. I might help you with it because it sounds interesting, but I've got too many stuff on my plate right now, so hopefully somebody else can volunteer.
I hope.
It's very interesting to me. I used Play-Doh because I went to the University of Illinois, and Play-Doh was kind of originated at University of Illinois.
Absolutely.
So we used Play-Doh all through my college career. And so I actually used it on an 8-bit machine back in the 1991-92 timeframe. Unfortunately, the software that I used on an 8-bit machine, it appears to have disappeared. And I thought I had copies of it on some discs that I had from archives, but I can't seem to find it. But
wasn't the HAL 9000 made in Illinois?
It was.
Yes.
It was indeed. Lots of interesting things have been made in Illinois.
So, Jim, what 8-bit machine did you run it on back in the day?
I ran it on a Commodore 64, which was surprising to hear that they're building a new Commodore 64 client, because I know for a fact that a Commodore 64 Play-Doh client existed at least in the 90s. It was reasonably complete, and would work at 2400 baud, and so that's what I used when I didn't want to go. I think on the main page you can see the terminals, which are, they were nice machines. A lot of them, though, at the time were still, they had wood grain cabinets, and they were this kind of neon orange plasma color screen.
Yep.
In the 90s, they were starting to roll out more of a PC style Play-Doh terminal functionality, which was basically a PC running the Play-Doh terminal software. But the original ones were this kind of big, fat, not very many keys on the keyboard, kind of like an Apple II. Let's see, not an Apple IIe, but
you can see a picture of it. You can see a picture of it if you go to Google Images and type in Play-Doh terminal. You can actually see a few different pictures of them and see.
Yeah, the keyboard though was a big, fat. It was like a chunky thing, and so then of course it had the touch screen. And whatnot, but it was a little hard on the eyes after a while to use those. So lots of us, if we could, we'd try to access it from our dorm room, so we didn't have to. And besides, there were only so many Play-Doh machines on campus. So.
Yep.
So how much software was made available for the Play-Doh system?
Well, that's the thing. With the distribution that I've got, there are approximately 16,000 pieces of published courseware that were officially part of a Cybus distribution, which is what I'm running here. The machine that's running over on Cyber 1 actually has more, a lot more. So you can attribute that in a very big sense to the fact that Tutor is incredibly easy to learn and extremely powerful. So.
Well, it definitely sounds interesting. I'd like to get some CoCo people involved in that. That'd be interesting to join in the fun.
Absolutely, and I mean, and to really put a bow on it here, I actually do meet every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. As a matter of fact, I need to go in roughly about 10 minutes to start for the next one, where I take and demonstrate the system and try to talk with users to see what they want and try to get them engaged in the platform. And later on, I will actually start doing workshops showing how to do tutor, how to make software for the system and whatnot, doing example games and whatnot.
Okay. Do you have videos of that up on YouTube too, like of one of your
Yes, I do.
seminars?
Yeah, there's a video section on the website which I'm continuously adding stuff to.
Okay. So people want more information, basically just hit your site. You've got tech specs, you've got sample screenshots, sample videos.
Yep.
Kind of explanation of the whole project as well.
Exactly. Tried to be, and with the main site there, I tried to be as succinct as I possibly could, just to draw people in and to try and engage. So.
And what's the website again?
IRATA.ONLINE. Yes, there is a domain called .online.
Is that now that's spelled? How do you spell errata in that case?
It's Atari backwards. IRATA.
Cool.
So it's the name of the planet. If you ever played Mule, it's the name of the planet in Mule.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and explanation of all that. That does sound like an interesting project. Like I mentioned before, Nitrous 9 has graphic primitives already set up to be very easily put over a terminal. So I would think, for the most part, we just need a translation grid between the two.
And I have, if you look in the GitHub, especially for like the Plato Term 64 project, you'll see protocol.c, which contains a complete protocol implementation for all of the basic necessary bits that you need to implement.
Okay, and you've got some extended stuff, I'd assume, for more modern machines that goes a little bit beyond the 8-bit stuff.
That's actually implemented in the Android terminal and in the if you want, there's the pterm source code, which implements the complete terminal, complete with Z80 emulation from MicroTutor and everything else.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Thomas, for coming on here.
Likewise, Mark. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Okay.
All right.
See you later.
Thanks, Mark, for having him come on. That was pretty cool.
Oh, this is exactly.
Oh, I think we lost Mark.
Yeah, Mark, muted again.
Cat stomped on the bar.
Cats are censored.
This is all exactly what I've been thinking about, having an integrated platform that people connect to, do gaming and stuff. And so this is, basically the whole structure for the back end. So I'm totally behind this. So.
Is this kind of like a Discord?
No, actually, it'd be more like an early online system, like the Source or Delphi or something.
CompuServe or Delphi or
yeah, it's basically a mini computer running multiple connections, except we're going to be connecting across the internet instead of dial-up.
Yeah, and graphical, so it's more like AOL versus say a CompuServe, which was all text-based.
But it's lightweight graphical because like I don't know if you explained that, you can basically, when you set up your program, you can redefine certain characters with images, and then you download the graphic images as part of your initial setup for entering a program. And then it's all done locally on the terminal. So when you send a lowercase a, it actually puts up a graphic symbol instead of the lowercase a. So you basically redefine your graphic characters as you go. So it's still lightweight.
That would actually work well with the CoCo VGA too, then, because Brandon just introduced at the fest here his new definable graphics characters on the CoCo VGA for the 64 column and 32 column mode. So it'd be perfect fit for this.
Yep, it would be. It'd be hardware support for this instead of software.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
In that case,
how do you log into it? Is it like a telnet session or?
Yeah, it's a terminal session. If you go to the IRATA.ONLINE, there's some links to a thing called pterm. So it's available for Windows, Mac, and there's source code for Linux. And so then you can basically go to IRATA.ONLINE at port 8005, and it'll give you a graphic screen that comes up. And I'm trying to remember, there's a place where you can log in. Basically, you can establish a new account. And then he'll have to OK you and then set it up. But there's basically an account name, there is a group that you're assigned to, and then there's your password.
So that's like joining a BBS then, in that case. But that's not the gaming stuff, right?
Well, the games are already on there. If there's a certain menu with games, and there's various stuff. David Ladd and I were trying to play with some of the Tank War ones, where you have a World War II simulation. But we played the Pong game. There's a Pong game you can play. That works pretty good. And then there's some other games too. Some are text-based, some are more graphic. So
So it wouldn't take much to just convert, like maybe Ultimate Term or something to it, or is there more to it?
The thing is to basically add another terminal emulation to like Ultimate Term or some other terminal program we already have, or the ones for OS 9 that already have stuff like that, and then you'd be good to go. And there's a bunch of stuff on the system already.
So it isn't like having to start from the basement and build up.
Oh yeah, it's a big step up. I mean, I was thinking of building from the basement up, but here's a system that has all the low-level infrastructure.
And 16,000 programs available already too, which is a nice jump.
A lot of them are educational stuff, but yeah, I mean, still, it's it'll be a great collaboration system for multiple platforms. Think of it as bringing back the source or Delphi for people.
Well, if they have a Jim Brain written Troll 101 course, I'd love to take that. So.
Working on it now.
And Richard said, if Jim likes it, now I hate it.
Yeah, we know.
But Rick Adams also said too, I have the Delphi term source now, but doing it with OS 9 sounds a lot more practical.
I've noticed that Dave Phillipson's been on this morning on IRATA.ONLINE, and he's been getting used to the P-term keyboard and the keys and stuff. And sometimes you do get stuck, and I've had to just cancel out and come back, and it restores to usually a menu.
No, it definitely sounds interesting. Maybe if I get some little bit of free time, I'll have to see if I can just act together something quick to do at least a couple of the primitives.
Curtis, you have to decide whether you want to sleep or not.
I just said a long time ago that sleep's overrated.
All right, guys. I think we're going to do a commercial break here for a bio. What does Stevie call that? A bio break?
Bio break. Yep.
Yes. Because we've been going on for about almost an hour now.
Almost an hour.
And I'm almost out of Jolt Cola, so it's perfect timing.
I was going to ask Jim, do you want to talk about some of your projects and boards too while we're at it, or you want to wait for a little bit?
No, I'm happy to talk. If anybody wants information, now would be the time. I will need to get on the road at some point this afternoon, so I may have to drop off.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do a commercial break, and then we'll come back to Jim.
Alrighty.
What's going on, guys? Stevie Show here, and I want to say thank you so much for being part of this adventure with us. It's been such a great experience in doing CoCo Talk every week, and the support we get is just amazing. And so the fact that you watch and listen is all the reward that we need. However, if you would like to become a patron of the show and offer some financial assistance towards the production and hosting costs of the show, we do have a Patreon site available for that, and you can reach that by going to our website at CoCoTALK.live and clicking on the Patreon link. But just do us a favor and watch and listen to the show.
At GSoft, we make games for the TRS-80 color computer, TRS-80 MC10, and Dragon computers. Our basic games cover the range of genres from arcade, to text adventures, to simulations, to 3D dungeon crawls. This is our latest puzzle game from Japan, Fruit Panic. So come on and drop by our website and download our latest games.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me, it's Original Gamer Stevie Stroh. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Alright, people. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness. You ready for this? Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay.
This is for you, Richard.
Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. All right, people. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Drop it low. Gameplay goodness. All right, people. Gameplay goodness. To the floor. Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness. Yeah. That's great.
All right, welcome back, everybody.
Hello, and
Hey.
I guess we're on to Jim Brain explaining some of his hardware stuff we saw at the fest.
Guys, get ready to drop your jaws.
So yeah, I mean, obviously CoCo Fest was the time to bring out new hardware, or at least bring out stuff that you've been working over the winter holidays. I know Cloud9 brought out some stuff, and Richard Lorvieski brought out some things. So for a couple of years, I've been working on a multi-pack. I had a 4-port MPI that I've been working on, and so I probably late last year started to consider what I was going to do with that particular project. Had kind of put it on the back burner because I was working on some other items, trying to figure out what all needed to be in a multi-pack, and so decided to kind of dust that project off and see what needed to be done to it to get it to production status so that I could get it ready for the show. And one of the things that I decided is I originally in the multi-pack, as I was searching for a multi-pack back in 2015 or 2016, one of the things I wasn't too wild about is the idea of having a big kind of wart hanging off the side of my color computer. And so the initial design I had used some IDE ribbon cables to connect a small board to the larger kind of multi-pack capability. And that was the prototype I showed in, I think, 2016. And so it took me a little while to figure out. I became a little bit disillusioned as I learned more about the color computer's expansion port, because I was saddened to find out that that the switching capability for the ports is not complete. So the way the color computer works is that certain register spaces in the I/O space of the color computer can be switched among ports, but others can't. And I was a little unclear whether there was still a market for a four-port MPI. But then I think in 2017 we started seeing some additional hardware capabilities. You guys have already talked about sound cartridges, and of course the CoCo SDC, and people still want to copy their floppies and so forth. So I dusted off that 4-port unit and decided that I didn't like the idea of extending it to be even longer than it was, but I thought maybe there was a way to offer a capability for additional ports on the unit. And along the way realized that I could put some additional ports on a 4-port MPI off to the side. And so at the show I demonstrated an 8-port unit that has 5 slots on top, and then of course 1 on each side and 1 in the back, and then a connector that sits underneath the MPI that can be used to put a kind of an expansion card or an expansion capability underneath the multi-pack. Because right now on the main multi-pack unit, it's a kind of a bulky unit, and the bulk of that is made up of the power supply, which you don't really need anymore with switching power supplies and whatnot. But the underneath of it looks to be a good place to put some additional expansion capabilities for the color computer. And so it seemed like there was a good place to at least create some future expansion capability around the MPI. Of course, I was readying a product for the show, and so I was kind of keeping it under wraps. And then Ed Snider came out with his, I think he's calling it a Mega Mini MPI. So there was a lot of discussion about that. It's got some additional peripherals built into the unit, and so I probably rode the coattails of all of that discussion. There was already a lot of people discussing around multi-pack interfaces at the show, and so when they got to my booth, they could see the 8-port unit, and then of course immediately there's usually 2 groups of people that came by the booth. One group of people was, I don't know why you'd ever need more than 4 ports, which is fine. And then you had another group of people who were like, oh my gosh, I've got so many new ideas now about additional things that I can put on the unit. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Right now, the prototype unit that is fully functional went with John Strong back out at the side of the show, and John's kind of our resident case making person. I have a 3D printer here, but I'm still learning how to use it. So And I think that's kind of a passion of his. So I sent it home with him to try and figure out how to build a case for it, because I think the product looks much more professional if it's finished up in a case. And then when he gets back with a price, I'm going to order probably 10 or so cases, and then put probably 10 or so of the units together and send them out to folks that I know can put them through their paces, just in case there's some lingering issue that I need to deal with. The problem with an 8-port MPI is not necessarily that there's 8 ports, and that's fine, and it works just fine. The problem is that most software is not going to know about the ports above 4, and so I put in some emulation capability into the design so that you can flip a switch and each port becomes doubled up. So port 1 and port 5 are essentially treated like a port 1 in an MPI with a Y cable on it. And so I figured that would help some people out that want to take advantage of the additional ports, but their software doesn't really know about the significantly additional number of multi-pack capabilities or multi-pack ports available on the new unit. So I want to make sure that works and does what everybody wants it to do. And then, of course, there's a couple things that I want to verify, and I just sent out a note this morning about. I know that back in the day there were a lot of people who modified their MPI for like running BBSs and whatnot, so they could have maximum performance out of the unit. They would tie all the cartridge lines together, I believe, in order to get interrupts to come in as quickly as possible.
Strap the IRQ lines together so you'd trigger instantly on no matter what port the IRQ came on.
That's right. But the problem is the cart line is also used to indicate that a cartridge has a ROM there. And so the question I'm wrestling with right now is how to present a capability of tying the cartridge lines together in the MPI, while at the same time offering the ability to not tie them together for people who don't need or want that capability. They want just stock MPI capability. So just maybe a few final pieces to put together, and then the unit should be ready, and be interesting to see what kinds of things people put in it. I did load the unit up here and do some testing on it. Most of the cartridges work really well with the additional ports. I did have a few challenges with the speech sound boards or pack. I don't really know. It seemed to be related just to that particular expansion capability, and so I need to dig into the speech sound controller and see just what exactly it's trying to do. It would function correctly, but it would start emitting this noise out of the speakers on the TV sometimes when I would boot the unit up. So just a little bit, and it didn't work. It wasn't a problem unless you had the unit fully loaded up. So there is, though, I think, something to be said about the fact that the old 80s style peripherals that were pretty power hungry, and they may not be decoded all that well because it was expensive to put additional chips into those units and whatnot at the time. I think all the newer cartridge capabilities will happily coexist in the 8-port unit, but some of the older cartridges, once you get off the beaten path of like a floppy drive controller and a Glenside or a Super IDE hard drive controller and some of the heavy hitters, some of the more esoteric cartridges that aren't like game cartridges, they could load the unit down significantly. So I think the key is that 8 ports are available, that depending on your mix of what you have at your disposal, 8 ports might not all be, it may not be equally possible to put any arbitrary 8 cartridges into the unit. It just kind of depends on how those cartridges play with each other on the CoCo bus.
Now, are you supporting the 12 volts that some of the old cartridges use too, or just 5?
No, I am, but I'm doing it, so I do both. So there's probably a picture of a unit. I didn't take a good picture of it before I gave it to John, so I don't have a good picture to put up right now, but the front of the unit has 2 power supply connections. One is a 5-volt mini USB connection, which is good for any of the general purpose kind kind of USB wall warts that have switching power supplies in them, or if you have anything that happens to deliver 5 volts via a mini USB port, you can use that. I was going to use a kind of a barrel plug like we used to see a lot of, but I was a little leery of doing that because it really does need to be 5 volts, not something else. There's no voltage regulator on the board so it really needs that 5 volts to come as a regulated 5 volt from a power supply. But the other one, to satisfy older boards that have needs for those additional power sources, there is a DIN 5 or DIN 6 connector on the other side of the multi-pack that accepts a power supply. I have one. It's a switching power supply that provides plus 5, plus 12, and minus 12 volts from Meanwell Technologies. They're pretty common power supply manufacturer, and not a ton of voltage or not a ton of amperage in this particular power supply, but there's no restriction on it as long as you have a way to get plus or minus 12 volts to that DIN connector on the front of the unit. You can use that, and then of course those power sources are also switched on along with the 5 volt power supply or power source when the unit starts up. So instead of like on the regular MPI where you have to turn the MPI off or turn the MPI on and turn the CoCo on then, or whatever order you put it on, this unit automatically senses when the color computer is on, and it will turn on the power to the MPI automatically for all 3 voltages. And it will support up to 4 amps of 5 volt power, and then 2 amps of 12 volt plus 12 volt power, and 2 amps of minus 12 volt power. Although in reality, I think there's only a few cartridges that use those additional power supplies, and your power needs should not be probably that extensive on the plus and minus.
Yeah, I think the original 1793 floppy controller, the one that some people modded to use for high density drives, is one that required the 12. And I think the XPad required the 12. I can't remember what else off the top of my head, but those 2 for sure.
The floppy controller can be modified with the newer Fujitsu chip, though. I've done that, and I seem to get pretty decent results. I haven't done a lot of testing with it, but it works.
Does it work with high density mod too, or is that just?
I don't have a high density mod, and I know that David has one. I should probably send him a Fujitsu chip. Let him try it.
So I would like to volunteer my testing facility to you.
That's fine. I will solder one up. I'm gonna probably have they're not that hard to solder up. They don't have a lot of surface mount technology on them, but they're just soldering 40-pin edge connector after 40-pin edge connector after 40-pin edge connector gets a little tedious as a while. So I've got another unit soldered up here that I was just waiting for some final parts on, and then I'll get it ready and get it sent out. I have some I have some ideas for some other potential capabilities for the MPI, but I think there comes a time where you kind of need to ship a unit. So
feature creep.
That's right. So I think I'm just gonna call it done and put it on. I had a little bit of challenge in 2016 or late 2016, early 2017. The ribbon cable introduced a little bit of additional noise in the sound line, and so I wanted to deal with that. And I think I've got I put a low pass filter on the. Yeah, that's true. That's the unit right there. That's in the middle there is the main unit, and then over on the right hand side is one that's fully populated. So I had some small issue with additional noise on the sound line, and so I feel like I've kind of taken care of that. So I think that was the last thing. I think somebody on here, it's difficult to ship a product if you're not completely comfortable with all of the things that it does, making sure that it does them well. So that was kind of the last item that I wanted to kind of clean up before I put the unit in production. It just has taken me a long time.
Now,
Everybody's got
Jim, you were saying that you're having a problem a little bit with the speech sound pack on a fully loaded multi-pack, right?
Yeah, correct.
You got to remember the speech sound pack actually does have internal voltages in there that are different than the 5 volts. They knew that they were going to drop the 5 volts on the other power supplies other than the 5 volts on the cartridge when they came out with the 2. And so the cartridge was designed to take the 5 volts, run through a DC converter to create the other voltages the cartridge needs. And it's part of the problem is they use the clocks that are on the EQ clocks to generate the frequencies that they need to create the voltage on the DC to DC converter. This is one of the reasons why it doesn't work well when you turn on the double speed poke on a CoCo 3, but more importantly, it is a very power hungry cartridge.
Well, that's probably the last thing you said is probably the most.
Yeah, exactly.
That's probably the most likely culprit. I was powering with a smaller power supply, and I at the time I mentioned it not because I think there's a long-term problem with the speech sound pack, because when I took a few of the extra cartridges out, it booted up fine. But but I think when you're that's probably the thing that's best to say. When you have a fully loaded unit, you probably need to make sure you have plenty of power budget, because if you get some of those older 80 cartridges, especially like the speech sound pack, and they happen to be pretty power hungry, then you could quickly be running out of power. And once you get a slump in the power rail, so if your 5 volts go down to 4 or whatever, different cartridges behave differently. Some cartridges will be like, well, whatever, I'll just work with 4 volts, and some, like the speech sound pack, may say, you know what, I'm not even gonna do what I need to do because I don't have my full 5 volts or whatever.
Exactly. The unit can have, it's got its own controller inside there, and it could have a problem booting when it doesn't get enough power.
And that's what I think is happening. So,
yeah.
Like I said, some of these things, like I said, I didn't want to bring into the show unless I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt it worked, and I didn't get the boards, the final boards back until not too long before the show, and so and of course now that's after the show, it's been, quite frankly, it's been a week of just kind of I don't know, what do you call it, kind of depressurizing. I kind of, whatever, debriefing, it is not the right word, but you just sort of, after you've spent so much time and then you've been at the show and you've answered so many people's questions and whatnot, you just come home and you're like, I don't even want to think about this for a couple days.
We'll blame David for that because he was asking you lots of questions about 16 slots.
And you spent a lot of time wiping the drool off the table there.
That's true.
But what
And,
the most important thing, Jim, what kind of warranty are you going to offer on this multi-pack interface?
1 hour. 1 hour or 1 mile.
Oh, okay, good.
And that's
You
a
actually
mile
had,
from my house.
You had 3 people that approached your table. 3 kinds of people. The 2 you mentioned, and then the other kind that wanted the brownies.
Well, that's true. That's true. My daughter, she got a lot of business from people who were waiting to talk to me. So that she always likes that.
But they all shared a common interest. They wanted to return items.
Getting trolled by the troll.
That's right. At least
another compliment is the letter style you use for your sheets and having everything the same in red. Everything looks real professional. I think you did a nice job.
Well, I tried to do that. Previous years, I would get there, and then people would come by the booth, and I'm always happy to answer questions, but they'd look at the products, and then they would step away, and sometimes you'd walk around at the other booths, and you'd hear these same people say, "Oh, the stuff over there at that retro innovations table looks really good, but I don't know what it is, and I don't know the guy, and so I don't really want to ask him any questions." And I'm thinking, okay, well, I need to fix that. So you get better at this as time goes on. But in any event, so that's one of the things that I put in. Hopefully we'll get in the marketplace very quickly. I assume most people will want a case, although I've got a couple people who are like, hey, as soon as you can build some units, I'll buy one out of the case and I'll put a case on it myself. So I'm like, okay, fine. David did, or somebody, Curtis did bring up a good point. Although I don't necessarily recommend this, the unit can be expanded. So it comes in 2 pieces. The one piece plugs into the CoCo and it provides the buffers, and then the other piece is attached via a ID cable and has the actual ports on it. Two of those second components can be hooked to the ribbon cable. As we all know, an IDE cable has two connections for drives, and so it's the same kind of cables. So you technically can put two 8-port units together and hook them up to the one color computer. I have not done a lot of testing on it. I tested it enough to know that it works. The big issue is going to be that, where do you find software that's going to scan all 16 slots and try to find everything that is on the system. But for somebody who truly wants to be on the bleeding edge, you can put two of the main NPI units together and try your hand at running 16 devices off of your color computer's expansion.
Awesome.
Yep.
I figure we
Really
would put
cool.
every single one of the new sound cards on there at once, and we'll create a symphony orchestra program that actually runs them all simultaneously.
That's true. That's true.
Now, I do have a question. If somebody was going to go and try to do the 16 slot solution, I'm assuming that will not work with the cases.
Yeah, no, it would.
Oh, what?
No, it would, because the case would. The only thing that would be a little bit strange or a little bit interesting is the one case needs to have the IDE cables go into the case and then back out of the case, whereas the design initially is just going to be for the cables to enter the case and then they won't come back out. So the only thing would be maybe making the I don't know how John's going to deal with where the ribbon cables are going to go through the case, from external to internal. But wherever they do go through, you may need to make that particular location wider in order to have the cables go into the case, and then they have to come back out because they have to go to the second unit.
Okay.
Realistically, there's such a thing as it is feasible and it is always possible. I'm not sure how practical it is, but if somebody wants to play around with that, it is the hardware solution will support that capability. And the Tandy back in the day, although I'm positive that they never intended for it to be used to this level, they did provide built-in capability in the kind of in the space for the NPI capability. They provided the expansion capability for up to 16 slots or up to 16 devices to be put in there.
Cool.
Yep.
Now, that's just one of your boards.
Yeah, I was going to say, so one of the other ones that I brought to the show, and really is a prototype as yet. I haven't kind of finalized the design, but I did want to get some initial testing done on the unit, is a four-port RS-232 card. There's been a lot of interest around RS-232, and we had talked back in a lot of the folks from this group had talked back in the October timeframe about, hey, it would be nice to have a dual RS-232 unit, and then there was this big debate over, well, do you do 6551s from Moz Technologies, which was the chip that was used in the Tandy RS-232 pack and the Tandy modem pack, or do you use a newer style UART from a company that most people know them by their number, which is the 16550 or the 16C550, a unit that Ed Snider's placed two of those particular UARTs on his Mega Mini MPI. They're really nice. They're really nice, and there's nothing bad I could say about the 16550. The only problem is that it has absolutely no compatibility with existing software that would have been written back in the day to use the Tandy RS-232 pack. So, and although I know that folks on the call here tend to skew towards OS 9 territory, where compatibility is not such a huge deal because you can just load another driver in, and there is already a 16550 driver for OS 9 or Nitrous 9. I do like to support RS-DOS and other users as well, and so I didn't really want to move completely away from the 6551. So I ended up with a design that has 4 UARTs on the board, 2 6551s, and then 2 16550s. And then when I got to that point, I realized I had created another challenge, which is how do you support who wants to use what, and there's only so many physical connections on the back of the board. So I created a multiplexer on the board so that the user can select, or depending on which UART they decide to start using first, the multiplexer will shift those RS-232 lines to the appropriate output device on the board. And there's 4 output devices on the board. So there's 2 RS-232 level devices, DB9 or DE9, which is the actual terminology, connections on the board itself, and then there are the pins come out to headers on the board for some of the newer style ESP8266 or ESP32 type devices. So depending on
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, the older chips, what kinds of software are going to use them? They're going to be old terminal programs, right? I mean, there isn't going to be a whole lot of backward compatibility for anything interesting, would there?
I don't know that there's. I agree that 6551 it's not as full featured as the 16550, but for a lot of use cases, the additional speed of a 16550 may go to waste. So there's, yes, a 16550 would be great for DriveWire or for an ESP8266 Wi-Fi bridge, or maybe there's,
or this project we just had the earlier speaker on for logging into that system.
Correct. Anything that has anything where the telecommunications capability, where information can be delivered to you faster and your experience can be made better, the faster that information is delivered to you, that would be a good candidate for 16550. But on the other hand, things that have a finite device, a finite capability to deliver data. So, for instance, like a GPS transmitter, if you cared about such a thing, or a mouse, or some sort of a input device, like he talked about on the previous speaker was talking about the touchscreen capabilities of the Plato terminals, and they make touchscreen overlays that you can put on a screen or whatnot. Sometimes they have an RS-232 interface. They always send the data at a very predefined rate, and it's not very fast, 2400 or 9600 bps or whatever. So putting a 16550 on that is okay, but you're kind of wasting the capability of 16550. So in that case, I think you'd be better off to use the slower devices or the less capable devices for some of that stuff, plus any software that you had back in the day that you wanted to operate that doesn't know about the 16550s. And then you could utilize the 16550s for any of that newer software that wants that maximum performance.
So you have both 2 cards, one for each chip.
Actually,
no,
it's all
one
on
card with
one
both.
Card. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so it didn't cost really anything more to lay out the board to support the 16550s. It's not really shown in the pictures, but they live underneath the 6551.
Oh.
They're very small, and so they just live underneath. So, and if there's always an opportunity to say, for people who say, well, I don't really ever have a need for a 6551. Well, okay, I just won't populate those chips, and I can sell the unit as just a 16550 board.
Well,
so
what are we looking at in this picture? On the right side left side is the one you were talking about. What's on the right side?
So on the left-hand side, was what we're talking about. On the right-hand side is another project that I brought to the show.
Oh.
So I can talk about it, but I figured I'd stop and see if there's any additional questions on the UART board.
Yeah, I was going to mention like the 6551 for doing serial mice. That's exactly what we did with Nitrous 9. We had 6551 and 6552 support, and it did run at a slower baud rate because a mouse is only sending 3 to 5 bytes a packet to say you've updated and you pressed a button or two. And it doesn't take a lot. I think we ran it at 12 or 2400 baud ourselves in Nitrous 9. And the 16550 was for the terminal programs where you want to run at 57.6 with multitasking, not slowing to a crawl. So for me, that would have been a perfect thing. I would have bought a ton of these back when we ran our work on a CoCo back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I would have filled like 2 or 3 slots with just these cards.
Right. Yeah. So, and one of the things that is an advantage to the unit is I have, I've done some work back in the day on, some of the other platforms. people use 6551s and realize very quickly that there were two features in the 6551s that people are not quite as aware of. One is the ability for the 6551 to run at 115K right out of the gate. So 115K is no problem at all to run, because there's a special baud rate that says run 16 times slower than the crystal that you have in, and most people had a 1.8 megahertz crystal, and you do the math, and that ends up being 115 BPS. So that capability has been available on a 6551 for a long time, but the people didn't really realize it. And then probably in the late 80s, there was a company called Creative Micro Designs that decided to add a little bit more value to that, and they ran the 6551 at double the clock speed. So instead of having a top speed of 19,200, it had a top speed of 38.4 in the native 6551 modes. And then they used this special additional crystal frequency or special additional baud rate to generate a 115K BPS setting, and then a 230K BPS setting. And the unit was called the Turbo 232, and so it was on the market in the late 80s and early 90s. I added that technology to this particular unit for both UARTs. So the 6551s that are on board can run at up to 230K by themselves. Now, the 16550 is still a little bit better because it has a FIFO, a first in, first out, so it doesn't have to service interrupts nearly as often as the 6551s. But you do, if you really want to do some fast communication, and you want to be very compatible. So you want to say, hey, I want to be very compatible with users who have the old Tandy RS-232 pack. You could write your software to take advantage of the 6551. So that would give you maximum compatibility, and then on top of that, you could write just a tiny little bit of additional code that says, hey, if I figure out that you have one of these cards, I can push the performance all the way up to 230K or 115K or whatever it is that you choose. So you have those capabilities in place as well.
Oh, that's good to know, because you could definitely get some decent drive wire speeds out of that. That's beyond even the hard-coded bitbanger routines right now.
That's true, and I think David has done that. So I think he's run drive wire 230K over the RS-232 pack. Or over, it was an earlier version of what I showed at CoCo Fest. It was just a single port RS-232 pack replacement that had these capabilities.
Yes, it was working very well, Jim.
Okay.
I think we just blew up Stevie's head just now.
Yeah, he says, I've been doing a shot with each mention of a techno-babble word, and he said he's currently in the hospital in recovery. So.
And I think, was there any questions on the CoCo Mim and CoCo Mim Jr.?
Oh, yeah, that's true. That was at the show as well. I've got a production version of that unit that I showed off. It was running on the CoCo 1. And then I had the older version of the unit was running on the Dragon, but yeah, those were available as well. So yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions about those. There's not, people probably know more about those than some of the other projects.
Well, the CoCo Mim Jr., I think your original spec was going to be a 512K board. You've since expanded that to 2 meg, correct?
Yep. Well, it wasn't really, the goal was always 2 meg. The reason 512 became a working discussion is because before when you start these projects, you don't always know how capable you are as a designer and whether you're going to be able to make it work or not. And I didn't want to, so surface mount, you can't buy really, really large SRAM chips or RAM memory in through-hole packages. You can only buy them in surface mount packages, and surface mount packages are great for size, but they're terrible for debugging. And so I really wanted to build the first unit with through-hole technology, and so because of that, I needed to constrain it to stuff that I could buy in through-hole. And the largest DIP style memory, RAM type memory that you can get is a 512K RAM memory chip. And so the initial unit had 512K just because it was large enough to require the MMU capability, so I could test out the MMU, and it was small enough that it could be sourced in DIP format, so I could attach some probes to the DIP leads and figure out what's going on. It turns out I didn't actually need to worry about that. My code worked right out of the gate, so it was kind of a waste. But that's where 512 came through. 2 meg was always my goal, because it just seems like a nice way to kind of fully populate the board. And of course now we're getting to the point where 512K may not be enough for people, and so 2 meg may be kind of the new kind of good horizon for memory expansion. But the final unit has a 2 meg RAM memory, SRAM, so it's just like Cloud9's Triad board and Boomerang and some of the other RAM expansions. It's a static RAM capability, so it's very, very power friendly. And there's very few components on the board to begin with, but the board is very small. Although Boise did say that it's challenging to put it into a Korea manufactured CoCo 2, because the CPU is what needs to be replaced in order to put CoCo Mem Jr. into a board, and the CPU on that particular model is underneath the keyboard. So I'm going to have to see how I can reduce the height of the unit so I can make sure that you can put the board in the CoCo 2 and then still be able to close the case and put the keyboard in and all that without things getting mashed or touching or whatever. But 2 meg
does it work on the Dragon as well, or?
Yes, it does. It works on the Dragon. There's no difference. It works as easily on the Dragon as it does on the CoCo 1 and 2. I've tested it on all the units I have. I have a Tano Dragon. California Digital is where I got mine, but I'm going to send one to Tormon, so he can see if he can test it, or he or somebody can test the unit in a non-US Dragon, but I don't anticipate any problems. It sits in the CPU socket, and it handles things in a way that's not Dragon or color computer specific. Technically, you could drop the unit into any 6809 based unit. It doesn't really have to be a CoCo or a CoCo compatible type unit. The only thing that it requires, which is also changeable, but currently the MMU functionality is modeled off of the CoCo 3. So the FF9 to the FF9X range and the FF-AX range are taken up by the MMU registers. So if you wanted to drop it into a 6809 board that had something else at those locations, you'd need to move those to somewhere else.
So now we're just waiting for the MC10 version for Steve Bjork to test.
That's right. MC10 version.
Wow.
Now, as far as software support goes, I think right now Tormod's already got an OS9 level 2 for CoCo 1, 2s, and Dragons. I think that already supports at least the 512, like for the Moo board, and should support the 2 meg right off the bat. And I believe Brett Gordon's Fusic also supports the full 2 meg on this too, does it not?
It should, yes. The only things right now is that most of the code that's written for a 2 meg unit assumes some CoCo 3 specific things, graphics modes or whatnot. And so we have to understand that CoCo Mem Jr. just provides memory expansion. It does not provide any of the additional video modes and whatnot. So you have to separate out, okay, what's part of this is CoCo 3 video related and what part of it is just memory related, because the memory related stuff should work fine, but the video related stuff needs to be dealt with, because you kind of have a hybrid here. You have the video capabilities of a non-CoCo 3 machine, but you have the memory capabilities of a CoCo 3 machine. So it's kind of.
I'm pretty sure Tormod's already done that on OS9. I think. David, do you remember? Because I think that's one of the builds he's done, isn't it?
I believe from what he's done, he's done a little bit of patching to level 2. I haven't looked at the code myself because of certain other things. But from what I've seen, it's whatever he's patched is just enough that it's makes it work with the Moo on the level 1, on the CoCo 1, 2, and Dragon. So, as far as the Junior, it should work.
Okay.
Yep. So Moo is, so first of all, let me say that I think what Tormod has done with that card, except for the name, I think he should have chose a different name, but everybody gets to choose the name of the products they want, and that's fine. But everything else about that card is amazing, and so we need to understand what it's doing. It's basically trying to sit on the expansion bus, which was never designed to have extra memory there, really. And it's trying to play the part of replacing the memory that's inside the CoCo 1, 2, and Dragon computers. But there are some pretty significant restrictions that he has had to work around. So he is somewhat limited in what he can do, and the patching that he's had to do in order to make sure that you can get access to that memory, and what parts of the memory map of the 6809 you can effectively use with that. So there's some definite constraints that he's working under. The CoCo Mem Junior doesn't have any of those constraints because it sits right inside the machine. It sits right on underneath the CPU. The only constraint that it has is that it cannot relocate video memory. So if you have video memory, or if you have the video screen and you've defined it in the bank, in the first 64K of RAM, because that's where the CoCo 1 and 2 have it, that's where it always has to be. It can't be moved to the card, or to the memory that's in CoCo Mem Junior, because the video chip doesn't know about any of the memory that's on the card. It only knows about the memory that is in the unit. But given the capabilities of the 6847 chip, I don't think that's a very big. It's not nearly as big a price to pay as Tormod has had to. The constraints that Tormod had when he worked on his memory expansion. But one of the things that it comes with is a cost, and the cost for CoCo Mem Junior, there's a cost to buy it, but the cost for the unit really is that if you pop open your CoCo and you don't have a socketed CPU, you've got a decision to make, right? And the decision is, do I want to bring my color computer to one of the shows and have one of the individuals replace the CPU with a socket, or do I not want to do that because I'm really a purist and I don't want to do anything with my color computer? That kind of decides your path. So if you're willing to put a CPU socket, if you have a CPU socket, you're done, right? So you can choose either one. That's fine. You probably may want to go with CoCo Mem Juniors because it has a few more features and it's got more memory. If you don't have a socket and you decide to socket your machine, then you're probably going to do so because you want to put something like CoCo Mem Junior in place. If you don't have a socket and you choose not to do so, then Tormod's board is going to be your option if you want to take advantage of additional memory.
Okay, and I presume it works with CoCo BGA too, so you could get some enhanced graphic capabilities.
Yeah, the only thing. Oh yeah, definitely. There's nothing that precludes you from putting the expanded capabilities of CoCo BGA in place. The only thing I can think of is that at some point. So I was at the Vintage Computer Festival Midwest last year in Elk Grove Village, which I highly recommend color computer folks come to if you're anywhere near Chicago in the fall. But anyway, I went there, and there's a lot of different machines that are represented there, and one of the other machines that I don't have a vested interest in at all, but it's interesting to see where all are going, is the Atari crowd. And so they had a guy there that had all his Ataris open, and we were looking at all the stuff that was in one of these Atari units. And the Atari unit he had open was, I don't know, 130XE or something like that. It was one of the newer style machines, and he had it open, and there's this guy over in the Ukraine or somewhere, I'm not doing justice, but anyway, he has made all these kinds of expansions, 1 meg expansions and ROM expansions and place to put a mouse and a keyboard and everything. And this guy had this 130XE all decked out with all these expansions. But at some point, there was just a sea of white daughter boards on top of this motherboard. You couldn't hardly see the motherboard because it was just full of little add-on cards. And I think at some point, it's not so much that it was a problem. It was cute to look at, but I think at least this guy was the same guy building all the boards, and so you could make sure that they would all fit together. I think the challenge you would have with CoCo VGA and CoCo Mem Jr. and maybe a couple other things that get in there is that Brendan and I haven't really discussed about how his card fits in the unit, all the units, versus how my card fits in the unit. And so there's a possibility that physically they won't co-locate, right? There's nothing preventing them from working together if you get them into the machine, but the let's say on one of the variants of the CoCo, the video chip is right next to the CPU. Well, that's going to be a challenge because each one of us has boards that are larger than the footprint of a 40-pin dip. And so somebody's going to encroach in somebody else's space. And it may be him and it may be me, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You know what?
I just saw Stevie.
I know. He was just being he is trying to troll his best, isn't he?
Yeah. And
He's
he is
failing at it. He's just
yes,
failing
he is.
at it. So.
Well, we've been on this thing for 45 minutes. Do you have anything else you want to say to kind of finish it up?
Well, obviously the last piece that I know a lot of people were interested in the show was I'm very interested in an accelerator capability for the color computer. And so one of the first steps in that is understanding how to get another CPU to function within the color computer. So at the show, I brought a prototype unit that has a dual 6309s running on a cartridge that you can put into the side or into an MPI that contains, each of the units has their own 512K of RAM, and it also includes 512K of flash ROM. And both of the units can operate autonomously from the CPU and the CoCo. So you've got the CPU and the CoCo doing work, and then you also have the two CPUs in this cartridge that are doing work. And so, multi-processing capability is really where that would shine. Each one of the CPUs has the ability to run OS 9 within the chip itself. And so I'm kind of interested in building out the cartridge a little more and seeing if people can provide any value or any kind of with any killer functionality that would benefit from having multi-processing capabilities on the
up to how much faster would you say it would be?
Well, I think currently the unit that I brought to the show runs at the same speed. The CPUs run at the same speed as the main CPU, so you could get up to 3 times the performance. Not quite, but getting close to it. If you were able to successfully keep those other CPUs completely busy. A unit that I have that I've been working on is a unit that runs both of those CPUs at 4 megahertz. So you would have the 2 processors running at 4 megahertz. And then, of course, the original CPU that's in the CoCo would run at either 0.89 or 1 point, whatever it is.
7.8.
Yeah, 1.78.
So you could use this as a coprocessor for like pre-doing graphics. You could have it, running pre-mixing sound samples together, so you can just pull a single byte out instead of mixing the 4 voices manually on the main CPU. So
rendering graphic streams, yeah.
Yeah, it has a lot of potential for doing stuff like that, I think. And the big advantage is there's a lot of FPGAs and stuff and CPLDs that could also do this, but there's not as many programmers in the CoCo community that know how to actually program those chips properly to do it or have the hardware to do so. This is something where you could load in stuff yourself and writing in a CPU you're already familiar with, you could do all this same kind of thing. Sorry, Steve.
One of the things that you could do as far as like 3D graphics, you could have the coprocessors work on the matrix translation for rotating or scaling the object.
You mean vector? Yep. Vector graphics?
Yep. And if it's running at like this later version of the board, if it's running already twice as fast on those CPUs as the CoCo ever could in the first place, and you got 2 of those, and you can divide one for doing sound and one for doing 3D matrix transformations, whatever, you could have some pretty wicked software coming out of that.
And Ron, I wasn't talking about vector graphics. I was talking about if you got a 3D object and you're trying to rescale it or other things, or if you've got it in a matrix and you want to put in a proper area, use a translation matrix to get the image there.
Okay.
There's lots of possibilities. Right now it's just there was funny. There were people that came to Ron's point earlier. It was funny having people come to the booth sometimes because you'd have people come and there's all these different variations of folks coming, but they did fall into categories. And one category of people would walk by and every one of the cards they would say, how much is this? How much is this? How much is this? How much is this? And I'm like, that's a prototype. That's that much money. This is a prototype. So it's like they see it and they're like, I want it. And I'm like, you don't even know what it does yet. I mean, you don't even, there's nothing that even is written to use it.
It's shiny.
I know.
It's pretty in pink. I mean red, but yeah.
I thought that was just hilarious. I'm like, I don't even know if it's going to be of any use to anybody. But I mean, I guess I should have just said $80. Okay, I'll buy one. Okay, well, fine. You can
R&D spending, that's what that is.
I know, that's true.
No, I think that has a lot of potential, that particular board, and combine that with a CoCo Mem with 8 meg and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that sometimes people will buy product like that to experiment with and see what they can push? Like, you're kind of doing that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming up with stuff that maybe the regular guy wouldn't do, but you know, some of the guys here are specialty freaks, and they would take off with it and do things that are pretty crazy, I guess.
Well, that's what he was just talking about.
Imagine getting one to Sockmaster and seeing what he could do with.
Yeah, I'm happy to put them in the hands. I'll be honest with you. You know, this is all kind of a journey for me. So, I think I talked in one of the other shows or one of the other visits, and I said, you know, the idea is you only get to understand the technology of the color computer and what it's fully capable of if hardware is where you want to focus your energies. You only do that by building these units, and you kind of progress further. So, you know, first it's how do you interface anything to the expansion bus, and then how does the MPI work? Well, let's build an MPI to C, and then the other one is, well, how do you successfully have more than one thing own the bus? Well, let's play around with that. Let's see how that works. How do you deal with, you know, RS-232 traffic, and can you do more than one thing on a card, or does every interface have to be a one-trick pony? Well, no, you can put 2 or 4 things on a card. So there's just all these, and to me, you know, I'm not really ready to share kind of the end state, but to me, every one of these is a opportunity to learn another piece of what my end goal is. But you can't do it all at once, because if you try to build a board that has everything you wanted on it, then you just get so, I think, frustrated in the debugging and diagnosis of bugs and all that. So you got to kind of work on one thing at a time. Like this board that I showed at the show, the idea for a second processor, and Curtis, you hit the nail on the head. I thought it would be really nice to have a 6809 on the board and some sound generation capability on the board, and then you could write your sound routines in the 6809 and run them on this other cartridge. And I built a board like that, a prototype, and back in late December or whatnot, and I got it here, and I started working on it, and I got the CPU to work, but I could not get the CPU to share the bus effectively with the main computer. And so I looked at the data sheets, and I realized the data sheets kind of lied to me, which is to be expected at times. And so then I went back to the drawing board, and I came up with a better solution, which is what this particular unit has. So it's like every time you do one of these things, you're learning something, and then you try to apply that to the next thing, and then hopefully over time you come up with this very large, very impressive functionality, like a CoCo Mem, or, you know, some other things that I've got on the drawing boards. You can come up with those things, and you can bring them out, and people say, oh my gosh, how'd you get there? Well, it's taken 2 years, right? I first started off here, and then I went there, and so on, and now we're finally at the place where you can be dutifully impressed with whatever it is that I've got ready to roll off the production line.
And that works the same as software development too. I mean, you build your chunks of code for different certain functions, and then you put them together. You don't try to write the whole thing as one big schmoz.
Mm-hmm.
Do you run into people that look at your stuff and say, you know, why? It's an old machine. You know, it's like, I try to explain to some of my relatives and friends and stuff that were, you know, working on this machine and adding things to it. And, you know, I have an SD card that I can put all the software on, and they go, well, why? You know, is it a PC? What do you do with it? What, you know, are you in the internet, or, you know? No.
I don't worry. I mean, yes, I'm sure there's those people out in the world, and they've been out there for a long time. I've tuned a lot of them out. The other one, I think the other thing that's helped a lot is with the internet being so prevalent now. Used to be, people were like, why would you do this? There's nobody who uses those machines anymore. Now with the internet, and people have this realization that, you know what, if it exists, there is not just a couple people that like whatever it is. There is a whole community of people. Like literally, there's a whole community of people who who collect Cabbage Patch dolls, and there's another group of people that collect Garbage Pail dolls, and there's Furby people, and there's people who dress up like Furbies, and so I mean, there's all kinds of people, and so I'm thinking
David Ladd.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking, in the grand scheme of things, I think S is actually pretty tame compared to what I've seen online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's like people that build up old cars which you can't get parts for anymore, and that's a hobby that costs thousands of dollars. So,
yep.
This is a lot.
Yeah. Look at it this way: all you CoCo nerds out there, you can stand up, put your head high, realizing there's worse nerds than you.
Well,
Indeed.
Yeah, for me, the color computer was what I had when I was a child, so therefore it's, the part of my life that was the happiest, at least dealing with the computer. So, and of course I'm assuming this is for the people that restore old cars, because that's what they probably had when they were a teenager, when they were first learning to drive, and they liked that car. Or what they wanted. And it's something that is sometimes a strong emotional attachment from your past.
Yep.
And
nostalgia.
And as far as the color computer goes, adding new hardware to it is not a bad thing, because you get to still use it in a way that you want to use it. And if you don't want certain devices because you don't give a crap about that specific device, then don't get it.
Yep.
And in my case, I'm one of those rare people that push things, doing crazy things that technically is still legitimate, which is how I find out breaking stuff. Or, like for instance, the 8-slot MPI, floppy drive, CoCo SDC, Sound Speech Pack, Orchestra 90, RS-232 pack, modem pack, Super IDE. You start adding all those together if you want them all usable at the same time. Well, guess what? You just went over the 4-slot MPI.
There's a new soundbite.
Yeah, really.
And Steve's head just exploded again because of all the acronyms he just threw out. So
Admission of breaking things.
Well, thanks a lot, Jim, for coming on the show and telling us all about your hardware and everything. And
yes, thank you.
You have successfully become the most trolled segment of the show today.
All right. Well, I'm always trying. Anywhere I can win, right?
So, and this would probably be a good time for me to bring up our sponsors here. And Retro Innovations is one of our sponsors, so make sure you visit his website at go4retro.com, and the 4 is the number 4, or store.go4retro.com.
Yeah, click on the return button.
And also we have CoCoVGA.com, the CoCo project, CoCo VGA project, and then we also have BoysenTech.com.
Otherwise known as Trolls R Us Part 2.
Yes.
Exactly. Troll Junior.
He doesn't have a return button because he doesn't have anything on his website yet. So.
And then, of course, Stevie's would kill me if I didn't mention this. Make sure you go to the Retro Swag shop at 8bit256.com to get your CoCo mugs and T-shirts and Retro Swag stuff there at that website. And, of course, if you need to go to I'm a CoCo Nut website for anything CoCo related, which also gives you several other links to a lot of other resources for the CoCo. And then, of course, the CoCo Crew podcast is the monthly podcast that everybody listens to. And then Extradus, how you say this?
Extructus
Productions at fd501.com. So,
and don't forget stpack.com. We missed that one there.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, sdpack.com. Had to get that in there, otherwise Stevie would not be a happy person. But thanks a lot, Jim. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it helps too because, a lot of us had the time to talk to you at the booth, but the people that didn't make it to the fest either due to money or distance or time, they probably had a lot of these same questions that we asked at the show, and having a nice summary of all 4 of your main project lines that you were showing off is good.
No problem.
And also, I'd like to do a little section here. It also helps when you actually have people on Discord joining in some of these discussions of things that they wish we could do or different projects that they'd like to see worked on. And when you can be socially active with other people, you know, you can get in on Discord and join in on conversations and say, is this possible? Can it be done? And other people say, maybe it can. Let's see.
Can I get one of my moderators in the chat to please kick out that original gamer, Stevie Stroh, please?
Yeah, he's trolling like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, he's kind of filling up sucking the bandwidth up there, I think.
I know.
Hey, Bruce. Hey, it's about time for a break, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. We'll have a bio break. I'll let the commercials run here for a little bit, and when we get back, we'll do a Why Did Tandy Do That? If Mark or Steve want to do that.
Yep,
all right.
Definitely.
All right, here we go.
Ron's Garage. This is the place. And it's on CoCoTALK. It was Stevie Stroh. And a cast of crazies that love this machine. Either one. Either either. It's awesome.
Hi, this is Mark Overholzer, and you're listening to CoCoTALK, the nation's leading weekly live talk show about the Tandy color.
Hi, this is Dale, your designer of TRS-80 Color Baseball, and you're listening to CoCoTALK.
Hi, this is Antonio Jimenez, author of such projects such as the Stevie Throw Devil and the SD Pack, and you're watching CoCoTALK. 3, 2, go.
Where can you catch all the latest news and information about the Tandy color computer and compatibles? Oh yeah, I'm talking about the CoCo Crew podcast. Dig it each month. Join John, Neil, and Mike as they lay down the latest news and information about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer and compatibles. Groove to interviews, tech segments, and discussions all about the Radio Shack Tandy color. Strut your fine self over to www.cococrew.org and start listening today. The CoCo Crew Podcast. Keeping it Coco, dig?
Imagine a different world. A world where Tandy Corporation has the upper hand. Where the CoCo surpassed all competitors. And all you have to do is travel back in time without making a single mistake.
CoCo forever.
Definitely earned this office.
Yes, you're too kind, and thank you.
You want to grab some food before we head back and look at that Alt Reality OS9 module?
It's only 40 years past due, but yeah, sure.
You saw my note, Grant?
All right, guys, we're back.
I just want to mention briefly here, too, that little segment about what did David break this week. That picture of that circuit board blowing up, that was Steve's head from all the acronyms David threw out earlier. So. Go ahead, Grant.
All right. All right. I think Curtis wanted to talk about something here about the forgot what was it, the Hugo's project. So I will turn it over to Curtis here.
There wasn't a lot of news this week on Facebook or on the groups and stuff, probably because everybody's still hungover from the CoCo Fest stuff. But Hugo has actually been working on his GUI, which we've demonstrated before. And now he's got window clipping and stuff enabled on there. And he had a little YouTube video that kind of shows a couple of features. It's 1 minute long, so I thought we could just run that. There's no sounds. We can talk over it if anybody wants to comment. So let me just share some video here, and we'll give you a quick look. That's showing up for everybody?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So this is demonstrating some of the stuff he's had before, like radio buttons and selections and menu drop downs and stuff. But now he's also got the clipping coordinates where you can, resize the window and it redraws. He says he has optimizations, etc. to do. He can definitely speed some of this up. But the GUI is looking quite good, and this is for an upcoming game project that he's doing.
So are these like modules you can use for other things?
Yep. He's designing it. I think he's planning on actually releasing it out after his stuff's done, so that other people can use the same library to make their own apps without having to write their own menuing system and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty slick.
Simon Jonathan was all anxious to get a hold of it too.
Yeah, I think he's going to help him optimize it. And a lot of this stuff was done in the Level 2 version 3 upgrade that never got officially released. That Brother Jeremy was selling for a little bit there too, but. There's some stuff in here that wasn't in that upgrade either, so don't ask me what that is. That's YouTube at its best.
That's some of what wasn't included.
Don't ask me. YouTube intelligence. Yeah, that's an AI should be worthwhile.
If it's a plumber, it's gotta show butt cracks.
We'll put that one on the card of Jim's there. But anyway, that was one bit of news that I did want to show because it's a really interesting project. The fact that he's planning on sharing it afterwards, meaning that other assembly programmers don't have to write all the GUI stuff. You don't have to write mouse drivers and drop-down menus and overlays and everything else. It's a nice project. Anyway, Grant, I think we've got our next segment coming up.
Yeah, after you just tanked the show there for a second. All right. Let me go ahead and we'll queue up because we're, as Stevie always says, we are a professional show. So our next segment is, why did Tandy do that? And we have two today, so who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Steve. Okay. Well, basically, this comes from a post we found on Facebook, the CoCo group, where somebody was trying to sit there and say, why are there so many unusual, weird names for CoCo games? Well, of course, what he's referring to the fact is that we had an awful lot of clone games where people didn't actually license the game, and they changed the name and a few elements of it in the hopes of not getting sued by the people that actually own the game concept. And it was rather prevalent, not just on the Tandy Color computer, but on most of the computer systems out there. But eventually it became even worse because of the way people felt about the computer. It's like, I'm not going to sell products for that machine. They can just go down the street and buy it at their local Radio Shack store. So it's like, they didn't come in here to buy the computer from me in the first place. They're probably not going to come back in here and buy the software. So Radio Shack had a lot of the software locked up. So there wasn't a lot of money in third-party development for the CoCo. Of course, Datasoft was an interesting company. We would license the game and sell it to, about 4 or 5 different systems. And luckily, the Color computer was one of them.
And just to go further along that line, I've actually got a couple pages on my games page that are devoted to doing officially licensed products. And you'll notice that the original CoCo 1 and 2 only had a few. Tandy did most of them. There was a couple third-party ones. And then after the CoCo 3 came out, Tandy got a bit more aggressive with licensing and mostly on CoCo 3 stuff, but there was definitely more showing up. And then I've also got a clones page, which actually just kind of compares what an arcade version looked like versus a CoCo version. So I'll share that screen. This is not YouTube, so I won't throw up stuff that I had no idea why it's throwing up. Let me just share this here.
All right, cool. We see it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one actually happens to be one of Steve's himself here. So and this is one of the fat binaries I like to call it, stealing from what the Mac called it back when they were doing the PowerPC Intel combo versions. But Arkanoid was one that got officially licensed, and I think you said you did Bash first, and that's kind of what got you the contract at Tandy for it?
Yeah, they figured I could get it done quickly and there wouldn't be an issue because sometimes some of the developers were turning in products a little slow. They didn't understand the fact that Tandy had deadlines of basically mid-spring because they had to print their catalog, and that came out in August. And if they didn't have the game available, for manufacturing by that time, it did not go in the catalog. So, and everything was the Christmas season. You had to have it done and in the stores for Christmas season. So, it just they paid nice, healthy bonuses, and they did a lot of things to ensure that products got done quickly.
Yeah, and in that case is one where you did a super cartridge, quote unquote, that actually had a CoCo 1.2 version and a CoCo 3 version with enhanced graphics.
Right. And actually what's kind of funny is the engine that's running the game was virtually identical whether it was the CoCo 3 or the CoCo 1 and 2. It's just those little subdrivers it would call that were unique depending on which game it was. Which system it was.
Yeah, and you can also see here I've got the arcade version on the far right. You can see how close Steve got. The ratio of the screen's a little bit different arcade games because they basically ran their monitors almost sideways, so they're taller than they were wide. But you can see he actually got the graphics really close to the arcade version.
Yeah, on that one there, I had the source for the PC version, which they had the source for the arcade version when it was being developed. So, and in the CoCo 3, the actual pings were digital samples from the arcade game.
Oh, cool. And then a little bit lower here, we see one of the very few third-party licenses. It was the Cornsoft Group, which is more famous for doing Tier City Model 1 and 3 games at the time. They actually did bring out an official version of Frogger that was licensed. They actually had the multi-part music, and it tried to multitask at the same time because there's no timer queue. It's a little bit jerky as it goes across the screen, but it played pretty good. It wasn't the best graphical version of Frogger we had as far as graphics goes, but it was pretty good overall. Clondath is rather a unique one. That's actually an officially licensed from the Starship Trooper by Robert Heinlein game, but they never made the game for any other platform as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
They did make a bunch of movies off of it later. Moon Shuttle, that's another one of Steve's, and that was the one I think Tandy didn't actually take over when you guys negotiated with Datasoft. That stayed a Datasoft exclusive, correct?
Yeah, actually that was actually programmed by James Guerin and Jerry Humphrey, I believe. They were using my game engine. This was a game that was produced after I left Datasoft.
And that one you can see they did a fairly low res. They used, I think, a P mode 1 or 2 or something like that, equivalent. 2, I guess, 2 or 0, compared to the original arcade. Poltergeist, another unique one, a license from the movie itself, and as far as I know, that was another one that never made it across to any other platform.
That was a direct license that Tandy did with the producers of the movie Poltergeist, and it was another game that was under a very tight restriction to go from movie to game, much like the way the Atari 2600 ET game was.
Oh, okay. Because I think this was done by Robert Arnstein. I don't think we officially know that, but yeah, I think it was him. He was from Texas.
Yeah, it barely squeaked in time for the catalog. Matter of fact, I think it got a little bit of an extension where the game was like 90% done, and they had to go with the catalog. It was like one of the few that they allowed.
Yeah, and it does have some bugs, like this first screen that's shown in the screenshot there. If you hold down the joystick button, cars never come out, so it's quite easy. Talking about those bug testing from earlier. And then, of course, Puyan, which is another one that was Datasoft, and then Tandy took that one over.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got the CoCo 3 era ones, which includes Rampage, which Steve's discussed, and given Jacob all the special tips on how to play it well. He forgot to tell me and Steve how to do that, but we'll get him next year.
Mm-hmm. You're unworthy, Curtis.
Yeah, apparently. Here's Robocop, which is, of course, that super cartridge that Greg Zumwalt did that had the MMU hardware built in the cartridge with 120K digitized sound, etc. quite different graphically from the arcade version. And the background music was single voice and a little bit warbly sound. But, there's a lot of levels in the game, so I have to give credit there, definitely. Greg Zumwalt also did the Tetris, which was another fat binary cartridge, which had both CoCo 1, 2, and the CoCo 3 versions. And on the far right, you can see the original PC-DOS version, because this was originally done in Russia. And it was actually a text mode game at that point. That I've actually seen the OS9 port that looks very close to that, where it's basically just space characters with different colors turned on and off. So actually the CoCo ports look better than the original. Now, the original arcade version, which came out a few years later, obviously had better graphics. And, of course, the most famous one of all, which would be Zaxxon. I remember taking this one to my high school. We had a kind of open day where everybody brought their home computers because we had Apple II Pluses at the school. And most people there were complimenting how much better the CoCo version was than the Apple II version. Sorry, Mark. And then, the other part of the discussion is on the clones, and I have another page here for Arcade Clones Index, which is very incomplete at this point. But basically, what kind of innovative titles they came up with to make these clones out, that you would look at the name of the game on the CoCo and kind of guess what the game would be, even without seeing the screenshots. And in some cases, you have absolutely no idea. So here's like the original 1942 arcade, and then Dicom, or Dave Dies, I guess not through Dicom, but he came out with Fighter Pilot. Amador came out as Cuthbert Goes Walkabout, which actually was originally a Dragon title before it got to the CoCo. And then Asteroids, we've had multiple clones. So there's Color Meteoroids by Spectral, which originally came out directly from them, and then Tandy licensed it and changed it to Microbes, changed the color set from the green screen to the white screen. Star Blaster, which actually added a few elements from Asteroids Deluxe, so it's kind of a hybrid between the two. Astrofighter, which Mark Data Products brought out as Astroblast, and that was the very first P-Mode 4 artifacting game I'd ever seen. So somebody had left it running at the local Radio Shack, and I had absolutely no idea how they did this. You weren't supposed to get color in P-Mode 4. So, and of course, our compatriots across the ocean and Nick and down in Australia would say, "What artifacts? What are you talking about?" And here's another Steve Bjork one, Popcorn, which I think was your very first CoCo game, was it not?
All right.
And then the original Avalanche. You can go into the details of that.
Yeah. It just it was so early. It was hand coded since I didn't have an assembler.
Ouch. But the surprising thing is that your Popcorn, because of the fact you used Popcorn, the original Avalanche was supposed to be boulders. Yours actually looks closer than any other clone I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Like Kaboom and others are based on it, but they're quite different. And here's Ketchum by Dave Edson at Aardvark, and then some games that added extra elements to it, like Kaboom did, where you had the Mad Bomber going across. But I think my favorite probably was Starship Chameleon, though, because he added quite a few extra things. He had the hollow bombs that are worth 10 times as much, and then you also had to hit the joystick button to change the color of your Starship Chameleon. You had to catch them at the same color. If you were the different color, you blew up. So added some gameplay elements. Bag-It Man and Bagman, which, given the limitations of P-Mode 4 versus the arcade, he actually did a pretty good job on that.
Mm-hmm.
Berserk. There's the Berserk later called Haywire, which from what I heard from Mark Data Products, I think was, what's the guy's name? Ron or Rob or something? But basically he did get kind of questioned about legality of how close it was, because he just spelled Berserk with an S instead of a Z. So they did change it to Haywire about a year after its release. Android Attack from Spectral, which actually had speech, if you had 32K. Monster Maze by Radio Shack. I don't remember who did this version for Radio Shack, but a lower res version, but it actually ran in 4K, which was nice for the 4K users. Bosconian, which actually the CoCo version by Mike Huey added some play elements that I think make the game a lot better than the original arcade version. The original one, you just sat there and shot all these space stations, and then you had a bit of a timeout where you just get flooded by ships. But he added the whole rescue the astronauts thing to it, which actually added a game element to it that to me made it a lot better. Burger Time and Lunchtime, which was one of the ones from the Tomix subsidiary for cheaper games for Novasoft. I don't have to run through all these, so Grant, if you want to cut me off at any point, let me know.
You just kind of run through them there real quick. I mean, just scroll down.
Yeah, so Carnival and Shooting Gallery, which is another Datasoft. Now, that one, did you get directly involved with Steve, or was that another one?
Shooting Gallery was, I gave James the credit on that one, because at that time they were only allowing one programmer to get credit on a game. So I wanted to make sure he got some credit on games. So he got credit on this one.
Okay. Centipede, we had quite a few clones.
Yep.
Circus, which is another clone Clowns and Balloons that Steve did.
And actually, Circus, we took that to the Comtech show, and within 10 minutes of show opening, we had some people come in from Cinegraphics or something like that, and they said it's Exidy. Exidy came in and said, you can't show this. This is based on our game. And I looked at him and I go, yeah, but yours is also based on Atari's game.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they just kind of looked at each other and kind of, and then they walked out of the booth. So they were all set to sue us until I pointed out that they had ripped somebody off.
It's like Inception for lawsuits. And here's Gems, which is actually a clone of the arcade game Columns that our own John Strong did, and actually has ORC-90 supports for stereo sound. So as you move your gems across left to right, it pans left to right on the stereo. One of the very few games we have for the CoCo that did that. Contras, which Steve has actually done a really good video of, and it actually supports 2-player multiplayer, has digitized sound effects, background music, multi-voice, the whole thing going through. It's actually quite a good game. Unfortunately, it was rather rushed through because the original programmer wasn't able to complete it. Jeff Steidel took it over and finished it, but it does have some bugs in 2 players because he was only one guy and he didn't have a beta tester to help him with the 2-player stuff, so there's some known bugs in there. Occasionally we'll just kind of freeze up and crash. Well, the sound keeps running.
How far did Steve get in that game?
First level.
Yeah, it's pretty well standard fare for Steve to just first level it.
And where can people get this information from? What's the website?
If you go to my games website, which is www.lthelettercurtisboyle.com /CoCo_game_list.html is the main root page, and at the very top there's some sub-page listings that you can go to, including these and some others. I also have stuff like a timeline that I started and haven't finished. I've got stuff by author, etc. So, but yeah, there's a whole bunch in here.
Yeah, why don't you just scroll through it quickly, because this is a big page. It goes on and on forever.
Just so I can get more hits, I'm not going to go through the whole
all
thing.
the way to the bottom.
I posted it.
Oh yeah, I wonder why.
It's in alphabetical order, is it?
Yeah, it is. So Zach's on, which Steve actually did the official CoCo 1 and 2 version, but there was never an official CoCo 3, so he actually did Z89 here, which is digitized sound effects, everything else too. And then Zach's Son, which was kind of, if you notice, it's got a different angle. That was to make it a little bit easier to program because it was using even bytes to do the horizontal scrolling, or sort of a little bit vertical scrolling, but and it also had the disadvantage of that. And when you did a sound effect, it had pretty decent sound effects, but as soon as you hit it, the machine froze dead to play the sound, so it was very jerky while you were playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, there's a ton of games on there if you guys want to go through it. I hopefully will be adding to it later on because I haven't...
Wow, there was a Paperboy?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Huh.
Food Fight and
What
a
about
game
all
that
the
almost nobody's ever heard of.
There should be quite a few Pac-Mans.
I don't think I even have Pac-Man in here yet. Like I said, I'm way behind on doing my website. I keep getting distracted with programming projects.
Mm-hmm.
Popeye. Yeah, I don't think I even have Pac-Man in here yet.
Wow.
There's a ton of them.
All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot, Steve and Curtis. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Let me shut my share or not.
Yeah.
And now...
Yeah, but that's the thing is everybody was hoping in the third party that it was small enough that the guys wouldn't come and sue them. Though I think eventually Sega did send a cease and desist letter to the guys that produced Zach's Son. Gee, I wonder how they found out about that game.
Yeah. And like I said, Mark Data Products, he, when I interviewed by email 10, 15 years ago, the guy that did Berserk, he actually said they did get a warning, too, that they had to change the name.
Mm-hmm.
And looks like we have D. Bruce Moore that has just joined us as well. Hey, Bruce.
Hey there, Grant. How's it going?
Doing pretty good. How are things up there in the Great White North?
It's not white anymore. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, we're 73 here. It's been going up as we've been talking. So
yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Bruce. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
We have one more. Why did Tandy do that? And let's see here. Nick, you want to go ahead and do that now?
Yeah, mine will be a quick one, and it's hardware related. My question of why didn't Tandy do that is regarding the Color Computer 2. The Color Computer 2 sounds like it's an upgrade from the Color Computer 1, but in reality, it was really just a cost-reduced Color Computer 1.
Yep. And a better keyboard.
So why didn't Tandy take that opportunity to make a composite video output on the Color Computer 2? They just stayed with RF. That would have been an ideal upgrade for people moving from a Color Computer 1 to a Color Computer 2 to have improved video. And it wouldn't have cost them too much more to add that, I assume. So
and they did make composite versions. I mean, the educational market did have composite CoCos from Tandy officially. Why they didn't sell it? Yeah. Why they didn't sell it as a general
Why
thing?
didn't they sell it? Yeah. So why didn't Tandy do this?
Steve, any insight on that?
Well, RF was pretty standard for video games to connect to your home systems. They would hook up to the TV. People had a lot of televisions in their homes that did not have any form of video in per se. It was all RF. Even the you hook up a videotape player, hey, you hooked it up through the RF. It wasn't until much later in the systems did we start getting video input on the TVs. So there wasn't much market to put that on there. Also, Radio Shack sold TVs that didn't have RF, only had RF connections on them. They didn't have video connections. So, you know, that's part of it. It's just they didn't feel much need for it. Now, we all know that somewhere buried in the machine was some sort of basic video signal because they had to make the PAL version. So, but
and the educational market versions, which actually did come with the composite out.
Because they would use monitors there so that they had cleaner graphics, the text was better, and wouldn't hurt the little eyeballs the kids were looking at on the thing. But these were also smaller monitors, and you're sitting very close to them, where most people usually were further away from the TV.
Now, my question along the same lines, I'd thought about this too when Nick had mentioned the question, is that, you know, around the 83-84 time frame when the CoCo 2 was getting done, was also when they were starting to do the deluxe color, which did have composite built in. I was wondering if that was the other reason, was that, no, you want an upscale machine, you're going to pay a bit extra and get our new one with the RS-232 and a sound chip and composite, and you want that one. If you want to just do the quick hookup to a TV thing, you'd stick with the CoCo 2.
Yeah, and really the development of the CoCo 2 was trying to reduce the cost of the project altogether, and they weren't going to add extra features to it. And effectively, they didn't to the CoCo 2.
Yeah,
matter of fact, they did subtract one feature, the extra power connections for 12 volts and like that on the outgoing power connector, on the cartridge port. So they were actually doing some reductions in what the machine is. So, you know, it's all about getting that price lower so that the Radio Shack stores could sell it well, and they're now starting to feel competitions from things like VIC-20s.
Yeah.
So,
which did have composite video.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, you know, you got to have the priorities and like that as far as what sells best from Tandy to Radio Shack.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, a lot of people hooked up to their big, you know, living room TVs, like 26, 32, you know, the big.
Oh no! Back in those days, your largest TV was about 25.
Oh, I had it on a 30 something, but it was one of those big, you know, wooden cabinet ones that you set up there, and I just hooked it up and I take it over, and then my parents would get
27-inch.
Yeah, that's what people hook their Atari 2600s and stuff up to too. So that was kind of what it was good. But yeah, I got in trouble lots because I'd be playing on it, and no, we want to watch TV now. No, I'm not done the program yet.
Yeah, it's you know, we keep forgetting what we had and didn't have back in the day, and TVs were smaller. Still, my last tube TV that I got was a 31-inch Sony, and I paid about $1,200 for that, and that was back definitely towards the end of the 80s, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned before, too, composite monitors back then were like 12, 14 inches usually, so it was a lot smaller. It's more for a classroom environment than a home environment.
Exactly. So, yeah, they definitely saw the color computer as a inexpensive home learning, teaching slash entertainment system for the kids. They wouldn't call it a video game system after the crash, though.
No. And I think because a lot of parents, didn't want their kids wasting their time on video games, so they would try to sell it as, it's an educational tool. You can learn to program on it. And You can get typing tutor and stuff on it. So.
Oh, I remember when they first started bringing out the computers at Radio Shack in general for the Model 1. They put recipe managers on there so the women could use the computer too. After all, they wouldn't use it for typing up resumes. That's something that women didn't do.
And I think on Facebook at one point a few months ago, I think Ron had found the old CoCo cookbook program, which was a pretty rare thing. And wasn't it Mark Siegel's brother or something wrote it?
Don't know about that one.
I think he mentioned that he was involved with it. I think he said his brother or something programmed. Now that's Mark. He was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he still is. If he wants to fill in the something like that, but I'm pretty sure
basic too.
Yeah.
It's just,
and it was slow, so it had a screen that came up and said, "Just wait 1 minute or whatever," so it could access.
Yeah, some of those early cook programs, you would sit there and had come up with the recipe, and you'd tell them, how many people would come up, and it'd tell you that you needed 1 3/4 eggs. Like you had a 3/4 egg chicken sitting around or something.
Yeah.
Or you just didn't buy the eggs in jumbo.
I remember a lot of bartender programs being out there too, how to mix drinks, and some of them even added so you could just type in or get a list of things. You'd select which ingredients do I have, and they would tell you all the drinks that could be made with that.
Yeah, mixology.
Yeah. There was quite a few of them back in the CoCo days. I remember some were on like Chromaset and T&D.
Yeah,
T&D.
So what are your guys' thoughts about Rainbow's collection every month that come out? Some of it was pretty rudimentary, and I mean, were there some stars throughout the time that it was produced?
Yeah. Rainbow tried to cover the entire audience, and a lot of beginners used Rainbow. I mean, there were some other magazines that got a bit more technical. Color Computer News was always my favorite because it was much more technical than Rainbow. It wasn't as well written, wasn't well produced, but they had machine language games. They give you the source code listing, or they'd have the source code for the William Tell Overture and 4-part harmony. Whereas Rainbow had a lot of stuff for beginners and some advanced stuff too. I mean, there was some games that had little ML routines and stuff too. Hot Cocoa did the same. But it was meant more for the mass market CoCo, so it was covering beginners through experts. And to be honest, I used it the most for advertisers because that was the place all the advertisers went. So if you want to see what new was coming out, Rainbow was the place to go.
Yeah.
I remember they took one of my listings and put it in the magazine for people to type in, and I get a phone call because for some idiot reason in there it said, "Do not publish phone number." They didn't see the not, I guess, but I get this phone call and he says, "It's not going to work." I go, "What?" "Well, I looked it over and it's not going to work." And I'm kind of going, "Did you try?" "No, in this one line in this you used this character instead of this character." I go, "Yes, but it'll still work." "No, according to the book on the color computer, that will not work." I'm going, "The book on the color computer shows you a way to do it, not the only way to do it." I'm going, okay, this is what I'm going to get. And I did get about another 30 or 40 phone calls from people that complained, "No, the program won't work."
Was Hot Cocoa, was that a very big magazine?
Define what do you mean by big? Like big circulation, big in physical page size? Or
No, big in circulation. Because it lasted a while too, didn't it not?
It started in 83 and went till about 86, I think. I think it stopped before the CoCo 3 came out.
I have some issues of it.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble, guys. We have Stevie Stroh, who is joining the call.
Uh-oh.
Here comes Mommy to berate us for going off the rails.
He's coming in right when we're already in the show.
Hey, how's it going, eh?
We're just about ready. We beat this to death now.
Oh, have you beat it? Have you beat it to death?
Getting close.
Getting very close to it. Yep.
Well, I think we should name this one we should name this episode the George Clooney episode, the one that ruined the franchise.
Kind of like the Star Wars reboot, Jar Jar.
That's been yeah. No, it's been pretty good, guys. It's been nice to be a fly on the wall and troll for once.
Oh, you were trolling? I thought you were being honest. Sorry.
Well, I think he's going to have a better appreciation seeing an episode done from the outside instead of the inside.
Hey, Stevie, you want to hear my imitation of you?
Uh-oh.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm having. I don't know what. I must be in a bad Wi-Fi spot right now.
There you go. That is so eerily accurate.
That is true.
I really got lost in translations because I'm in a bad Wi-Fi spot right now.
Oh, well, let's do it again. Richard,
try it again. There you go. Yeah, that pretty much summarizes this show. That was Jim Brain's entire segment right there.
Oh!
At least what Steve remembers of the segment.
Yeah. After he woke up from it, yeah.
Are your ACIAs sore?
Yeah, I put a couple links out there too. Curtis, when you were showing off your clone site, because you and I had done a few showcases, like our Defender clone showcase. So I put that link out there. Yeah, it was a good topic. I can't wait for the replay because I haven't been able to stay completely focused on it. So I'll jump off. Guys. I just wanted to say hi and thank you for doing it.
Yeah, get back to your family.
I will, but it's coming up to everyone's favorite part of the show, though. You said you're getting ready to end it, right?
All right.
Yep, we're getting very close.
We're going to do CoCo Talk After Dark yet.
Yeah, like that's going to happen.
All right.
Oh, yes, it is.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks for stopping by.
Go, but I want to say thank you. Thanks for doing it, man.
Yep.
Yeah, no problem.
Anytime.
Right.
Who was that man?
I don't know. Some crazy guy.
Steve Stroh as STROH, right? Isn't that him?
You get hecklers wherever you go.
No video, so we couldn't tell if he was smoking pot.
So I'm going to do one more.
I don't think he's doing that at his grandma's place, okay?
You don't know his grandma, do you?
Nope. Oh, he said, sorry, fell asleep. Did you say something, Mark?
Well, Nick,
I just said you get hecklers wherever you go.
Yeah. Nick, did we cover your questions thoroughly enough, or did we go off too much off tangent?
Oh, no, we covered it. It's all right, yeah. That's good.
Well, actually, we had 2 channels on the CoCo. 3 or 4.
For the RF,
yeah.
Cool. So, before we go here, and I'm going to do another commercial here, but D. Bruce Moore, did you have any updates on your CoCo Forever?
Just working hard at it. Yeah, I was laying down some dialogue yesterday, and it's coming. It's coming. I want to make sure I've got enough of it ready to roll before I release the first one, because it would really suck if I released something and then there's a big gap between episodes. That don't really.
Yeah, the darn real life stuff keeps getting in the way. So.
Yeah. So I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen. But yeah, no, it's coming along, and as it comes along, I see extra little plot twists I can put in, and I think you guys are gonna like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait to.
I have a question for you, Bruce. Have you ever done anything like that before, like an episodic, like you do recording and stuff? But have you ever done like an episodic talk thing before? Or?
Not an episodic. I've done I did a kids book thing, so multi-voice, all that, sound effects and all that. So I've done on a small scale, but not something, this big, But I think that the trick to doing it is you write out the whole thing first, the whole main idea first, and then you write the last episode word for word, and then you know exactly where you're going, so there's not a whole lot of messing around to do in the meantime. And then I had to do
in that trailer you got, is Volkswagen yours?
No comment. It's not there by accident. I'll tell you that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Ron, did you have a Ron's Garage this week?
Just a little one.
Okay. Let me go ahead and do a little commercial here. We'll do Ron's Garage, and then we will wrap it up for this week. So I'll run a couple here commercials in case you got to do what bio breaks, I think is what you guys call them. All right.
Imagine a different world. A world where Tandy Corporation has the upper hand. CoCo surpassed all competitors. And all you have to do is travel back in time without making a single mistake.
CoCo forever.
How does it feel? I'm still believing.
You definitely earned this office.
Yes, you're too kind, and thank you.
You want to grab some food before we head back and look at that alt-reality OS9 module?
It's only 40 years past due, but yeah, sure.
How does it feel? I'm still believing.
My fellow Americans, Australians, Canadians, Europeans, and all of you aliens, I'm calling on all y'all to help us make the world great again by visiting the retro swag shop at 8bit256.com, where you can get yourself a coffee mug like this with a little cute cartoon character that says I'm a cocoa nut. You could also get yourself a coffee mug like this with a color computer screen that says I'm a cocoa nut. You could get yourself a deluxe travel mug like this with the CoCoTALK logo on it. You might even be able to get yourself a DVD like this with over 2 hours of gameplay goodness. It is time for us to rise up and make the world great again by enjoying some quality retro merchandise and CoCo nostalgia. So please visit 8bit256.com and let's make the world great for the color computer. Thank you very much.
Coming back, guys. All right, we are now back, and we will now go ahead and get ready for Ron's Garage. Ron, kick it away.
Okay. Well, what I have basically is a deep dig into my garage, and I came across this Tandy 4100 professional 46 computer, and booted up to floppy. It has lost its memory. The battery went dead. I took it all apart and looked at the battery, and it's a non-standard little button battery thing. I tried to put a piece of tin foil in there and jam a larger one in there, but it didn't stay and it didn't work. So I have to go back in there with the proper battery. Anyway, I opened it up, and there is no fan on the processor, as you can see here. It's just a CPU in there with a little thing on it, and yeah, and it has a little bit of memory in there, probably 1 megabyte or something. Anyway, there's a Windows Millennium startup. It booted to the DOS prompt, and I was thinking this would probably be a neat case to repack in. It says Tandy on it.
I do not remember this computer at all.
No.
Was it one of the last ones they did?
Must be. It's a 4100 MT professional series. It's a really nice case.
4100.
Yeah. So it has a sound card in it, and modem, and that's pretty much it. Well, the sound, it's not a sound card, it's a hard drive card, you know, IDE card, and a Creative CD 1X, I think, maybe 2X or something. But anyway, that's my find in Ron's garage. And the other thing I've been doing in my garage is I hooked up my Dragon to I'm not gonna there. Sorry. Hooked up my Dragon to SDC, and I was able to secure some programs, and then I went ahead and started to figure out the DOS, and had a sheet here that I had printed out, which has some of the DOS commands, and I must say it's just a little bit archaic. Some of the commands they're nothing like this has what's called an extension for DOS plus 5, DOS plus 5.0, and a DIR is SDIR. There's you have to mount things. It's like a whole new game. I got so far as to put VDK is the convention for DSK, and I stuck it in there, and I got it in the second drive, and I could not for the life of me figure out how to do a directory on it and then run one of the programs. So I just stopped where I was at, shut it down, set the switches again back to CoCo, and went back in the in the house from the garage, and thought, yeah, I'm going to have to get a whole bunch of information on how to and actually review it and figure out how to do the syntax, because it's just completely different than a CoCo.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because I mean the Dragon's color basic, extended basic ROMs are pretty well identical to the CoCo, you know, aside from keyboard mapping and stuff because of the hardware differences. But their DOS is completely different.
It's weird.
It's actually easier to run OS 9 for me on a Dragon or a virtual Dragon because at least the OS 9 is
Probably.
the same.
The thing I was interested in, it was when I got my computer from the digital place, I opened it up and I didn't see a manual in it. I saw a piece of paper that said some interesting things to say, but there was no manual like for basic. There was, didn't have one. And then I suppose back in the day they didn't really have a disk drive that you can buy for it with a controller in the box like we had.
Nope, they did.
Well, it wasn't
I don't
common.
think it wasn't as common as ours.
No, and there probably was not a manual included in that either, maybe, huh?
I think there was, but maybe Tano didn't get them when they got them up here in North America.
So I'm thinking, man, a newbie going into a Dragon really has to start from zero, and figure out how to actually work the thing. So that's what I'm going to do, is do some research and figure out how to get it going. Once I do, maybe I'll make a little video and post it, and you can see what I've done. But it's hard for an old guy to learn new stuff. Sorry, it is.
Yeah, the Dragon is a different computer altogether. I mean, I've had some struggles as well, so I haven't had a chance to do as much as I would like with it. But yeah, hopefully we'll find some more stuff. And I think you were asking the question: was there a Ultra SDC image like it is for the CoCo, right?
Yeah. No,
and I do not know the answer to that question. Does anybody else know?
Nope.
No.
I didn't know some people, like there's the Dragon archive site that has a ton of stuff, but I don't know if they have like a master with everything all collated
Brendan
together.
Donahue downloaded a whole bunch of stuff that were VDKs, and I was able to get what he had. And the thing was, the file names were too long, and they had a little arrow in there, and the little arrow isn't reproduced. Yeah, I can't reproduce it. You have to do what you have to do is go and rename all the hundreds of programs there are.
I think if you do a shift, and I can't remember which arrow it is it shift down arrow or shift right arrow or something? I think you can get it, but At least on the CoCo, I don't know about the Dragon.
Well, the thing is, basically, if you want to, the other thing is, I wanted to have an Explorer come up, and it has a VDK for that. But again, I wasn't able to open it up and see in it so that I could run something because I didn't know the syntax. So,
yeah,
I suppose I'll have that up and going later.
Yeah, it's definitely a
Sure,
steep
right.
learning curve if you're used to the CoCo, and it's DOS.
Yeah, I always want to do the old commands because you're sitting there at a keyboard and you just want to start doing what you've always done, but it doesn't work. So you stare at the screen, thinking to yourself,
SN error.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's like learning a whole new system. I've learned that myself, and there's not much documentation out there for it that I've been able to find. So,
Well, somebody did point me to a PDF section of their archives that has they have a DOS PDF, but I haven't looked at it yet.
cool.
So
we'll have a follow up once you learn the syntax.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll probably be getting some people to chime in here in the next week, and that might be able to help us out on that. So,
Yeah, Kieran and a few of the others, Tormod, could help with it. Grant, did you ever get your unboxing video done for your Dragon? I never did see it if you did, but
no, unfortunately, I have not. And in fact, actually, I purchased a tripod, so I'm going to probably be doing it here in the next couple weeks here after my surgery. So,
okay,
cool. All right. Well, have we beat this one to death yet? I'm sorry, David. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say something to Ron. From what little I've played, at least with XRoar, in Dragon 64 mode, and with the Dragon DOS, the Dragon DOS has a few differences. Instead of it being disk ini, it's disk init. And the fact that the reason why the disk basic for the Dragon is different is they weren't restricted by Tandy for that, and they actually put a lot of features that would have been comparable to Nitrous 9 for how it could access disks. Because on Dragon DOS you could format 35 track was the norm, but you could do 40 track, you could do 80 track single-sided, and you could do 80 track double-sided.
And that's with the DOS they had. The stock DOS.
The Dragon DOS, yes. And that was something you just format it, and the information was encoded into, I don't know if it was in the directory structure, their allocation table, or where the data was stored. But basically, it put on the disk structure how big the disk was that you formatted. So therefore, you could, it was much more flexible than what Tandy had.
Robust.
And unlike disk basic and color basic, where you had load 'em and load and save 'em and save and load 'em, well, save 'em and load 'em was actually non-existent. It was save and load. Those would both save binary and basic, or load binary and basic with the same command.
So the software knew the difference.
Yeah, the basic could tell which file you was doing. So there was no reason to memorize two separate commands to load machine language or basic programs. So that was handy.
I would seriously like to burn a ROMs and put it in a controller I have, and put a couple of drives together and take some of these and make disks just to have them. It'd be interesting to do. The whole process of doing it's fun. To actually have made a disk when you have them on. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Well, guys,
something to
have we beat this one to death? Is the Titanic sinking at this point?
well, David snuck his floppy talk in just now, so I think we're done now.
Oh, did you want to go into disk format procedures?
Oh God, no! Please. My head would definitely explode on that one.
Oh, you don't want gap information, huh?
Drive wire.
All right. Drive wire, Drivewire TTL RS232.
Yeah.
All right, the horse has
Covered
long been pulverized now.
All right. Well, we'll be going through our closing thoughts here, but I just want to thank Stevie for giving me the opportunity to fill in for him this week. He should be back next weekend. So
That
we'll be
lazy
going
bum.
back-
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be going back to him talking every 30 seconds and
Interrupting everyone. And
yep, and his bad jokes and you know how that goes. Also, I want to thank Curtis Boyle for also helping out too as well. So thank you, Curtis. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just a space filler. I just, use big words to watch Steve's head explode. So.
Yay, Curtis! Yay, Curtis!
Well done.
Want to thank everybody else who joined us earlier today. I'm sorry, you're going to have to help me here, Mark. What was your friend's name again?
Oh, Thomas Cherryhomes.
Thank you. And also Jim Brain and Richard Lorbeski. Thank you for also joining. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some other people as well.
Thanks for trolling, you two. And
yeah, and thanks, Steve, for coming in and trolling everybody and checking in on us and so forth. And also thanks to everybody who came into the chat. We had a few people in there today as well. Rick Adams was in there. Bruce was in there. Mikey N60IL. I don't know who that is. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Disney Saint Fans was in there. And James Jones. So, but yeah, thanks for everybody who was in the chat today as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Any closing thoughts? Ron, you're up.
We still have the last half hour in credits.
Yeah.
We love so much. Well, Coco Fest is over, and I go and look through the pictures, and I see some interesting things that I wasn't able to see when I was going by looking at the pictures, and that's kind of cool. So.
Yeah, and what site's that at? It's on Facebook, right?
Yeah, there's. I think Stevie has the 2018 Coco Fest list of pictures.
Yeah, the Facebook page.
Yeah, I contributed a lot to them. Yeah.
I contributed one because I forgot to take pictures the whole time. I was too busy yakking.
But you should go through and look one by one and actually see what's on there. There's a whole lot of information there that's you just look and see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about Tom C. He was also in the chat, too.
And James Jones, formerly
James
of
Jones.
Microware.
All right.
Mark Siegel.
Yeah, Mark was in there briefly at the beginning.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Mark Overholzer, any closing thoughts for this week?
Well, Coco Fest was a blast. Glad to meet everybody, and glad we're kind of getting back to normal, I guess, kind of. And I'm excited about IRATA.ONLINE and where it can possibly go for us. And I'm glad to be here, and I think it's been another good show.
Yeah, and that actually might be a good idea for Stevie to do maybe an interview with him and see if get some more interest into the project.
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks again for having him come on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nick Marentes, you're up. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, no. I see you successfully run another 3-hour show, so. No, it's good.
We do what we can for sleep aids for people. That's all I can say.
That's true. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Nick. Steve Bjork, any closing thoughts?
Well, just what Dave was talking about earlier with Discord. If you kind of have withdrawal issues from Coco Fest, or you want to get an idea of what we do at the Coco Fest, we do a lot of discussions late at night on Discord.
Yes, we do, and sometimes those things will go on to the wee hours of the morning. Thanks, David Ladd. D. Bruce Moore, any closing thoughts from you, sir? As I just catch it. Sorry about that.
I appreciate the help I got on Discord last night with my CoCo SDC. I can officially now run a game and then type the EXP command, and it goes back into the menu. And it was not working before. And I think, Grant, wasn't that you who helped me sort that out?
Yeah. Actually, that was something I learned at Coco Fest, and also from David Ladd's video that him and Stevie did.
Well,
because I was like you, I didn't know that existed either.
there's the community at work. Yeah, it's fabulous.
Great, great. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today. Appreciate it. David Ladd, you are now up. Any closing thoughts?
Yes, I'm glad everybody showed up to CoCo Fest. I am happy for the community that has joined Discord so far to hang out and discuss projects, tips, tricks, and useful information, or just sit around and just gab about everything else. You know, it's a great time, and hope to continue. And
Okay, that's enough.
see you on the flip side. Nick, don't make me come down there and smack you.
And it looks like Coco Man is getting trolled by Stevie in the chat. So, Coco Man, it's up to you now. Any closing thoughts or
Any
anything you want to say?
thoughts? And Stevie, yes.
Pummel him.
Stevie's still jealous. We know he's still jealous, and I actually tried to let that joke die, but he's carrying the torch, and that's fine. But
Stevie, level 1 Strobridge.
We know who the bigger man is.
Yeah, actually, this might become the best Coco talk ever, you know?
No, but I did some work. I have a SCART cable that's up testing right now, and I got another one on the bench here right now, and you can get your switcheroo at cocoman.biz.
Cool. Yep, and Stevie needs to get off his lazy butt and get you added to the sponsor page, too. Steve, did you hear that? All right, and then finally, Curtis Boyle, the co-host with me this afternoon.
Well, thanks for letting me co-host and make up stuff. Report on stuff as we went along. Yeah, CoCo Fest was great. It was nice meeting people. I was going to mention Mikey. Actually, he was at the fest, and he's quite active on Discord too. He's been helping Brett with Fusic stuff, and he's been helping with the CMOC compiler and a bunch of other things too. So, just want to give him a bit of a shout out since he was in chat and wasn't able to make the live show. Thanks for Stevie for substitute trolling when Jim and Richard weren't available, like right now.
It was great. It was wonderful watching Stevie troll Jim.
Yep.
That was good. I have to.
The most impressive part, I think, for Steve was when he trolled Jim live at the show. That one bit there, and actually got Jim to laugh out loud at that one. That was priceless.
That was good.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I have the same problem everybody else does. I've just not enough time, too many projects. I've been working on the ease of use stuff. I've been making notes for stuff for the level 1 upgrades I want to do, and some other general Nitrous 9 stuff I want to do. This new project that we had our guest on earlier today, for doing a terminal program that does graphics and stuff that's compatible with a bunch of other computers rather than just OS 9. That sounds really intriguing. I wish I had time to do it myself. Hopefully somebody else can pick that up. All the new hardware and stuff.
Thank you for everything you're doing for Alpha.
Whatever number we're on for, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I got a whole list of. I've got documents all over the place of plans for upgrades to G Shell and upgrades to Nitrous 9 itself and upgrades to Basic 9 and RunB. So I got a ton of stuff, and I just keep jumping back and forth. So hopefully it'll be really good once it's all done.
When you get a bunch done and you shoot out another edition.
Yeah, I like that. This last one here, the Alpha 3, was kind of rushed just to get it out in time for the fest. So, and I was busy with work because I have 2 seasonal periods of work that are quite busy. So I didn't get much done, and I've got a little bit of a break right now where it's not too busy. So I'm hoping to crank some stuff out, but. I don't want to just release them on a fixed time schedule because that means twice a year it's going to be like almost nothing has been done on it. And then, over stuff like Christmas where I'm not busy at all, then I'll have more time to get to it. So I'll try to do it when I get a certain number of features added as opposed to trying to do it on a fixed time schedule.
Is the version 3 out? Have you released the... Oh, okay.
Yeah, you should have got the email because you're on the list. So.
Yeah, okay.
It's on the FTP already, so come grab it.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. Curtis is busy, as Steve says.
Oh, the email was upside down. That was the problem.
All right. Well, I guess this will be for Jim Brain's favorite part of the show now. We'll go ahead and do the 15-minute outro. By the way, Stevie, you're fired. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Here comes the outro. Or not.
That's high quality production value at work.
Jim thinks you've really improved the outro now. It's a lot shorter.
Wait, when you press the right buttons, it happens.
We need some stars, and here we go.
That looks like the opening credits.
The world's leading live talk show featuring
there we go.
Tandy Color Computer. For all things CoCoTalk, visit us on the web at CoCoTalk.live. We'd love to hear from you. Send feedback, suggestions, even segments via email to CoCoTalk@CoCoTalk.live. If you love the color computer like we do, then visit imacoconut.com for all your color computer needs. Consider supporting the show with a purchase of merchandise from our retro swag shop at 8bit256.
Volume!
If you'd like to become a patron of the show,
Yeah,
visit our
unfortunately,
Patreon site at patreon.com.
it is not the loudest.
CoCoTalk would not exist without the community and its cast and crew. Thanks go to Curtis Boyle, David Ladd, Mark Overholzer, Grant Leighty, Bruce Moore, Rick Adams, Rom Delvaux, Richard
How you
Lorbieski,
doing?
Jim Brain, Nick Marentes, Karen Anscombe, Simon Jonason, Wayne Campbell, Steve Batson, Brian Joyce, John Strong, and Barry Nelson. Special thanks to Steve Bjork for production suggestions and Brian Joyce for our Best of 2017 episode. Please help support the CoCo community by visiting some of its contributors. The CoCo Crew podcast at cococrew.org. Glenside Color Computer Club, host of CoCo Fest at glensideccc.com. Jim Brain and Retro Innovations at go4retro.com. Tandy Assembly at tandyassembly.com. Cloud9 Technologies at cloud9tech.com. Boyson Technologies at boysontech.com.
We have to update some of those pictures now for this year's fest.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too.
We should. Oh, you know, we could do a morph from the older one to the new one.
We'll tell Steve to get right on that.
Yeah, I need to stop being so lazy.
Exactly.
More trolling. Where's the mid-credit roll?
Oh, pff. Yes, there is a he has now called the post credits now too. So here's that.
Hi, this is Max Jackson live from CoCo Fest. And you listen to The Real Gamer, Stevie Stroh.
Hi, this is Rick Adams, and I'm the
Volume.
author of Temple of Brahm, Shanghai, and now Bomb Threat, and you're listening to Stevie Stroh on CoCoTalk.
Hi, this is Sean Wheatley, and you're listening to CoCoTalk, the original gamer, Stevie Stroh.
Hi, I'm Bruce Moore, and this is Jacob Moore, Gotcha. And we are the Forest of Doom guys, and the CoCo Forever guys, and we're at CoCo Fest, and we love Stevie Stroh.
Hi, it's Curtis Boyle, part of the CoCoTALK
Who's that?
people, and a lot of us are here down
Sounds like a Canadian, though.
Some hobo, he's not even shaving.
You guys should have to come out next year. Hello.
Yeah, it needs a haircut
Volume,
too.
volume.
And he needs it.
The world's leading live CoCoTalk show.
Something like that. You want to do it over? We want to do it? Alright. The world's leading weekly CoCoTalk show. Yeah, something like that. Alright, we're rolling. You say whatever you want to say, David. Keep making faces.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
How about, hi, this is David
last
Ladd.
day at CoCo Fest. How sad are you? Or happy are you?
David Ladd can't have something to talk about.
You just can't do it on demand.
I'm Mark Overholzer, and you're watching CoCoTalk, nation world's leading weekly Tandy computer. Thank you, David Ladd. Now get back up there for 1 second.
Oh, jeez.
Come on. let's get some drive wire, TTL,
No.
ESP.
No, we don't need any drive wire, TTL.
My name's Ron Delvaux, Timberman, and this is CoCoTalk.
spelled Earth wrong.
How you doing? That's not a Coco.
Here's Richard.
There's Steve or Mikey.
Or Mikey, yes.
Mikey.
Richard was a little bit earlier.
But it's a cousin of the Coco. Really have to work on that volume.
Yeah. Only does it on some of them. I don't know why.
It's a known issue.
We'll fix it in post.
Exactly.
You know, I'm noticing a theme here. Steve's in every picture.
Ah, you finally clued into that.
He's a bit of a tension whore.
What are you still doing here? It's over.
Good thing Steve wasn't there.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching. See you guys next week.
Later, all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.